very small, but we
Okay.
canceled that at the last one, so
Oh, that's
wanted
right.
to tag it on here. And I have a couple just more like general budgeting, formatting, final remaining items to be discussed and calendar stuff but I can do that at the end. Let's get to the big part of the budget tonight. So.
All right, sounds great.
Hello.
Hello.
So welcome, everyone. Amy Boles, Superintendent of Schools. Thank you for having us tonight to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about our FY26 budget. First, to review in your folders, there are 3 documents that you will probably want to have out, and we'll reference all 3 at different times. First, you do have a hard copy of the PowerPoint, so if you want to take notes, you can on that. And then on the left-hand side is a 1-page front and back overview of the school department budget, which shows the cost center breakdown percentage-wise. It gives an overview of what we are asking for in the budget, our priorities, and then on the back is a description of the cost centers so that you understand as we talk about each cost center what is actually included in that. So if you need to reference that at all, you can look at that and have that definition. And then the other handout, the last 1-page handout, is our typical version of the budget. So this is our version 3. We start with version 1, and we've been working diligently on it to get it to this final proposal. And so I will be going through that throughout the budget as well with you to explain all the parts and pieces. So just to jump in and give you an overview of our agenda tonight, I do think it's important for the council and taxpayers to know some of the things we accomplished in FY25. We'll talk briefly about the timeline, as we are on a different timeline than other departments maybe are because of the budget referendum. We'll talk about each cost center, what's included in those budgetary changes. We'll talk about fixed costs and what the percentage of our budget is fixed costs, things that we're thinking about for future planning, things that we're already talking about in this budget but may not be realized and or are starting to implement. Talk a little bit about our comparison for per pupil expenditures, our budget percentage over time, so that people can have a better understanding of what those percentages have looked like, the revenue side of the budget, and then of course give the council a chance to ask more specific questions or make recommendations that they may have after hearing everything. So first tonight we want to start by talking a little bit about what the FY25 budget did for the school department. First and foremost, we opened our first 2 public pre-K classrooms with 31 students. This is free public preschool for 4-year-olds at EEMS. That is 2 teachers, 2 ed techs, all the curriculum, all the furniture, all the necessary materials to open that up. We also implemented First Academy, which is our remote program for students who maybe are having problems walking through the door. That is full currently and is serving 28 students with a wait list. So that is something that we're really proud of that we implemented this last school year. We expanded our CTE offering. CTE is Career and Technical Education. We added carpentry at Sumner Memorial High School this year. It is a part of the HCTC budget and is an important piece that I think is great for our community in terms of workforce development. We really have talked about the last 2 years needing to do a complete overhaul and reassessment of our curriculum in all subject areas. And I'm really proud of the work that administrators and staff have done this past year with reading and writing and implementing an entirely new reading and writing curriculum that includes a spelling component and phonics component, along with teachers participating in Science of Reading PD, which is quite intensive. We've implemented elementary, middle school, and high school social studies curriculum and materials in the FY25 budget. We've gotten new printers and copiers, which we were in desperate need of district-wide, and the way we purchased those has resulted in thousands of dollars in cost savings in printing. We've streamlined and are more efficient with our online software for curriculum and how we protect student data and student data privacy. We've done a reboot and a Chromebook refresh for incoming ninth graders this year. One of the biggest things that will be visible to people that I showed finance this past Friday is phase 1 of our EMC facilities project, which has resulted in another phase of our roof at Ellsworth High School, windows, all new LED lighting across the district, and a variety of other efficiency savings that we did as part of an energy efficiency project. We added an additional social worker at EEMS specifically for special education students to help with social groups and social skills. We have a new school psychologist. We began our implementation of replacing old buses and purchased 2 buses this year. We've rejuvenated our Education and Workforce Committee in collaboration with the Ellsworth Area Chamber of Commerce, which Annie Sargent, our Adult Ed Director, has done. And our adult education program has offered over 350 courses, varied from reading to writing, math, high school completion, program readiness, workforce readiness, and college completion. So those are just a few things that we were able to do in FY25. So in looking at our timeline, just to remind people, school departments are on a much different timeline because of the referendum referendum vote at the end in June. So we have to work backwards. And so once that budget referendum date is set, that Tuesday in June, we have to work backwards so that we can have our budget approved in time to go to print for the ballots. So you will see that this started back in October with our people, our boots on the ground, starting to do an assessment of their needs. What are some things that we thought we could accomplish in the budget? Then that's inputted in November, December, and we start doing revisions and review with department heads and principals in January to get us to tonight. And then now moving forward, our timeline is tonight will be an initial presentation. We'll take your feedback, and then at our April school board meeting, we will ask for school board approval of what we present as our final budget, and then we will present to City Council for a vote at your April council meeting, which will help us meet the timeline and deadline for the budget referendum in June. So again, some of this was presented at Finance Committee a couple of months ago, and then those of you that attended our strategic planning night saw some of this data, but I thought it was important for the public and all counselors to see. So schools have to put enrollment in, and the October 1 deadline is when the state takes all of your student enrollment data, and that's the catchment they use to determine all of their financials to build your budget. So everything that you'll see for data, except for one piece of data that we thought was important, is all based on October 1 counts. So total right now, again, this does not include adult education. We are at 1,500. The reason why it says overlap is because some of those students that are captured in the HCTC count also attend Ellsworth High School. Okay? We think it's really important for people to understand the complexities that Ellsworth is currently facing, as it is dramatically different and has become more challenging over the last couple of years. Probably the biggest change that we have seen is the increase in economically disadvantaged. So in 2023, 2024, our count was 432, and it has jumped over 100 students to 536. And those are only the ones who would communicate with us and talk to us. So you have to guess that there is a group of students who probably should be in this count, but for a variety of reasons are not communicating that data with us. So this certainly lends itself to different challenges within the school department. Our education counts have remained pretty stable over the last couple of years. 256 qualify under special education services. And then the other two pieces of enrollment that I think are really important for you to see is multi-language learners. We have now a variety of languages in our schools that teachers must contend with. You will see that over the last 2 years, we have fluctuated. We do have a bit of a transient population that comes in and out, but we're hovering between 20 and 25 over the last couple of years of multi-language students. McKinney-Vento, we did want to show, because this has gone up as of November 20th. We are currently, and again, there's probably more, we have 51 students that are considered homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act. And a lot of times, I think people think that's high school students. It is not. We have an ever-growing number of students at our K-8 school that qualify under McKinney-Vento as well. So our budget process, it has been pretty similar to what it has been the last couple of years. It's really important that we are collaborative. Our leadership team is here tonight, which I think shows their commitment to the budget process. And they're here to answer questions if there are specific questions I can't answer. Our finance committee with the school board, and then my coming to finance committee of city council, I think helps with communication and transparency. We presented to city council a couple of months ago and kind of showed what our grant funding looks like, because that is taken into consideration as we build our local budget. We're looking for equity for experiences for students. So if you're in classroom A in grade 2, we do not want you to have a completely different experience than classroom C, second grade. So really looking to make sure that we're providing equity across contents and across grade levels. We're always trying to think ahead. As you know, a couple of years ago, we felt like there was so much work to do. I still feel like there's a lot of work to do. But I feel like over the last couple of years and moving forward, we are making gains so that we have plans, we have purpose with what we're budgeting for, and taking all kinds of things into consideration. This budget really has to address valuing our people, which means our workforce. So as you may have heard in the news, educators feel like they are under attack, and there is going to be a huge shortfall of education workforce. And that's not just true for early learning, that's true for education in general. So more and more, it is becoming extremely competitive when there are openings to fight with neighboring districts for that small workforce. And the more that people retire, the harder and more complicated that's going to be. So recruiting and retention our staff is something that's really important to us that we're really thinking about moving forward. We also more and more have to consider the whole student in our budgeting process. It can't just be that we're dealing with reading. I wish it was. But now students are very complex. They have a variety of social, emotional, financial backgrounds, and we have to take that into consideration when we approach our instruction. And schools more and more are being asked to and relied upon to help educate the whole child and help with a variety of things. Finally, we are looking at data a lot, not just your traditional academic data, but enrollment data, so that we can try to look at what's working, what's not. If it's not working, we're not going to keep spending money on it and putting it in the budget, and really trying to assess where we're at with data as we make decisions in the budget. Some things that continue to challenge our budget and threaten our budget, some of these were on the list last year as well. Unfunded mandates. I attend every week a legislative hearing for all of the state superintendents. I represent the Hancock County region at these meetings. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of legislative bills coming forth in this next legislative session that have a dramatic impact on education. And one of the things that all of us as superintendents continue to talk about is some of these laws might sound great in theory, but they come at a burden to taxpayers. And when you put some of these laws in motion and say schools need to do certain things, where is the money coming from for that? So there continue to be unfunded mandates that we have to take into account. Our facilities, we've done a lot of work. I'm really proud of the work we did in phase 1 with our TELP, but there's more work to do that we'll talk about in a little bit that we have to consider. Increasing complex student and family needs. We've already talked a little bit about that. That is definitely a challenge for us moving forward. And again, decreased workforce, which we'll talk more about in a bit. The next slide is a pie chart. We thought it was important. Sometimes there are comments in the community about administration being top-heavy or money isn't going to students. And we really wanted to dig in and look at the breakdown of cost centers. So when you look at this, it's hard to see the percentages, but I can kind of share. Regular instruction part of the budget is at 31.9%, special education at 20.1%, career and technical education 7.4%, other instruction 3.1%, student and staff services 8.7%, and other, which is your food service program, is at 0.9%. That's 72% of our budget is directly at students. So those cost centers all directly align to students. Then if you take the facilities pie at 8.8% and the transportation piece of the pie at 5.1%, that's 13.9%. So those two things, you could argue, your school buildings and your buses to get kids to school, you could argue have to do with servicing students. If you add that to the 72.1, we're at 86% of our budget is directly related to students. System administration is at 3% and school administration is at 4.1%. So total administrators, which also include all of the costs around the administrators that operate our district, is at 7.1 total. So we thought that was important to break down in terms of a visual for percentages. So now we'll get into talking about each cost center. So if you look at the white sheet in your packet, coupled with the slides in the presentation, we're going to walk through the top half of the handout. The top half of the handout has your cost centers all the way to the left. Then it's the 24-25 amount. Then what we propose for 25-26, the difference between the two and what that percentage increase is. So what I'm going to do right now is walk through each of those cost centers so you can see some of the things that we're doing. One thing that I do not have on every single slide is all the things we took out. So what we have are major substantive changes to each of these cost centers, not necessarily everything that we cut, okay? So regular instruction, quickly, is your pre-K through 12, teacher salaries, benefits, general classroom instruction. Staff included in these lines is your pre-K through 12 teachers, not CTE, not administrators, and any support staff. So some of the major changes that are in this cost center is we've done a lot of reshuffling and looking at what is working and what does our community need. And so on here is a list of things that we would like to see realized in this budget. First, we are hoping to add 2 additional public pre-K classrooms in partnership with the Y. And Matt Montgomery is here from the Y. We have met several times. The school does not have space to open more classrooms for pre-K. And what you will see in most towns and communities is that families would like choice and different options. So this budget has an additional opening of 2 classrooms at the Moore Center that we would staff, that we would purchase curriculum and materials for, and it would be housed at the Moore Center in partnership with the Y. And what would happen is families would enter the lottery just like they did this year, and we would now have 4 public pre-K classrooms for 4-year-olds in Ellsworth. That would service 64 kids. And what would happen is families would then be given the option for before and after care at the Y so that they could have wraparound full-time daycare if they wish. And so that's what our partnership currently would look like. We do receive substantial subsidy to help offset the costs of pre-K. So there are incentives built in for pre-K, And for every 4-year-old that you enroll, you get a per pupil subsidy amount, and then you get add-ons for those students because they're 4, so they take a lot. But we would have 4 pre-K classrooms in the fall if this gets through the budget. We've talked the last 2 years about the need for an additional gifted and talented teacher. Currently, we have 1 teacher at the K-8 school, and we're patching things at the high school. We're at a point now we cannot continue to do that. Our K-8 1 teacher is over-enrolled, and one of the things that we have heard loud and clear from the community is they want students receiving gifted and talented services to have more. And so we feel we need to make this shift and add a teacher that would be shared between the high school and the middle school to help offset the numbers that the teacher currently at the K-8 school has. She has way too many. So this budget does have a gifted and talented position in the budget. Our numbers in physical education and in all, actually, of our, what I'll say our specials at the K-8 schools, so phys ed, fine art, and music, we are understaffed, and we are asking teachers to carry caseloads that, in my opinion, are too high. Right now, we have 3 phys ed teachers K-8, 2 of which have 500 students enrolled in classes. That's way too many, and not enough minutes for what we feel is appropriate for physical education offerings for K-8. So we would like to, with this budget, add a half-time physical education teacher. Some people may say, how are you going to get a half-time person? We would like to have the other half be someone who assists with athletic and co-curricular offerings at EEMS. We already have money in the budget that covers that stipend. So this would be an additional half-time phys ed and roll that stipend into the other half of the day. We also want to expand our alternative ed and First Academy supports. I'll be honest, we talked a lot about adding a second teacher, but when it came right down to it, we feel it's more prudent where we've only had First Academy for 1 year to get 2 years of data, really dig into it more and look at what we're doing across First Academy, alternative ed, and online classes, and see if we can absorb some savings before we add an additional teacher. So this budget does have ed tech support for those programs to help offset the large numbers that are in those programs. This year, we have an incredible investment in our budget for world language and science textbooks and instructional materials. Last year, we did reading and writing and social studies with FY25. This year would be science and world language. We haven't had new textbooks in world language and science for over 10 years at the high school. And when you're offering AP courses, you lose your ability to offer those courses if you don't keep up, and we are at that point. We also need to overhaul our instructional materials at the K-8 for science as well. So this budget has those in there, but we absorbed the cost savings because ELA, writing, and social studies, other than consumables, the big-time curriculum purchases were in last year's budget. There is VPA equipment in this budget as well. The first is, I'm going to say it and you're going to giggle, a Peter Pugger. And yes, we had to look up what a Peter Pugger was. So that is to help with sustainability in your clay classes so that you're not purchasing and purchasing clay over and over again. Nikki can explain it way better than I can, but it allows you to reuse your clay over time and have cost savings. So that piece of equipment is in the budget for our art department, as well as the beginning of purchasing new instruments for our band. A lot of our instruments are old and have broken, and our band offerings are expanding, which is exciting, into the middle school, and so we need more instruments. And so that is in the budget as well. But with additions comes us also looking at where can we find cost savings to help cover all of these things. And when we look at enrollment, there were 2 areas that by the reduction of an FTE, would result in class sizes being where we feel educationally we're okay and we're not overloading. So this budget is a decrease in one position at grade 2 and one position at grade 4 based on enrollment. So those two positions are out of the budget. The next cost center is special education. The biggest change in this is an increase in tuition costs when kids are placed at Kids Peace. Without divulging a lot of personally identifiable information, we have some significant behaviors in our schools that results in students being placed at residential treatment facilities. And those do come at a burden to taxpayers. And so this budget does have an increase in tuition cost for placement at places like Kids Peace and Stillwater. And then we also have a need for another certified behavior analyst that can help us with behavior plans and behavior management across the school. This is not, I'm afraid sometimes that people think, why can't people just manage behavior? Behavior is not the behavior of yesterday. It's not kids shuffling at their seats. It's significant aggressive behavior, complete refusal to adults. We still have an obligation to educate them, and we cannot suspend students anymore up till 5th grade unless they're an immediate safety risk to the school. So there's been changes in the way schools have to approach things, a lot of which are for the better for kids, but it does complicate things, so this budget does request an additional board-certified behavior analyst in our budget. Career and technical education, there's no substantive changes. We did try to add 3 programs to our budget, and we went out for recruitment for 3 new programs. Medical assisting in collaboration with Bucksport Regional Health Center. And then we worked with the chief to try to get firefighting and EMT, and we did not have enough high school students enroll in those programs. So we decided it was cost prohibitive to start those programs, even though there were a handful of kids that wanted to enroll in those programs. It was too expensive. So we made the painful decision to not put those forward in the FY26 budget, which leaves Hancock County Technical Center pretty much at no substantive changes in terms of increases. Other instruction looks at all your co-curricular offerings, after-school programming, all the transportation costs that go with those. The biggest thing that you will see across the board, everyone hears there's a shortage of officials, there's a shortage of all of those things, and those costs have gone up and up and up and continue to go up. So judges for co-curricular events, officials, porta potties at our fields, all of those things have increased, so you see a substantial increase there for that. We also are looking to increase our opportunities in CTE at our middle school. So you may have seen on Facebook, a lot of middle schools now have Skills USA at the middle school level. So students can start experiencing career and technical education and then compete and march with the high school students. Lemoyne and Hancock are really highly involved in that program. So we'd like to bring CTE to Ellsworth Middle School and participate in career and technical education. Student and staff support. So these are programs and services outside of regular instruction, so outside of the classroom teaching. So guidance counselors, your nurses, library, all instructional technology, and anything that you do with improving curriculum and assessment in your school falls under this cost center. The biggest change that you'll see in this cost center is around technology, and is something that I want to explain a little bit tonight. As we have continued to upgrade our facilities, one thing that has become clear over the last couple of years is that we have not updated furniture or our instructional methodology in technology. What I mean by that is we have classrooms throughout the district who don't have adequate projection or TV screens or technology so that they can teach. Our equipment was put in when schools were built, and they are now failing, and some of them are so old that now we can't even get replacement parts to try to patch things together. So what we have done in this budget is we've kind of looked at two scenarios to completely outfit the entire school department with new instructional technology in every classroom. And the reason why we would do it all at once is multifold, that I'll explain. So when we looked at doing it piecemeal over the course of 3 or 4 years, it was going to be exponentially more expensive, okay? Because the more you buy, the cheaper it is. Also, the more we talk to other school departments, one of the things we realized is when you don't do it all at once, if you do it over the course of 3 to 5 years, and things start to break, then you're starting to have the problems of patching things and everybody using something a little different because technology changes. So what we have done is we have taken the total cost of doing this across the district in all classrooms. So adult ed, HCTC, EEMS, and EHS. We have taken that cost and we've looked at trying to do it as a purchase this coming year, but do it over 3 years. So what we have done is we have applied for what is called a RUS grant. It is a federal grant that we applied for that says, if you are selected, we have to do a 15% match of the total cost, which is $75,000. The RUS grant would pay for the entire rest of it. We won't find out if we have gotten that grant until September 30th, okay, which is not great for us in terms of budget approval. So what we've done is we talked a lot as a team to try to figure out how can we accomplish this, whether we get the grant or not, that is not at a burden to taxpayers all at once in a budget. So we've put the 15% match in the budget at $75,000 in this cost center, and we would propose $100,000 of our fund balance go into a reserve for technology. And then that way, if we get it, we have year one of a 3-year payment if we finance it over 3 years. If we get the grant, then we have a reserve for this cost center of student and staff support is what the cost center would be called. And we can use that $100,000 as our first year payment and get a third of the loan paid. Did I say that right? Look at me. So that's what we would propose to do, and then that way we're covered. But the $100,000 is not in the general fund budget as proposed. But we believe this would make the most sense for us and be more cost-effective to purchase everything all at once. The cost that we have would be retrofitting every classroom with technology for instruction, including professional development for all staff as well, and installation.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I don't want to forget.
Yes.
So you've got a $393,000 increase in that?
Yes.
And that's not including the $100,000?
Nope. So it includes the $75,000.
Yep.
You guys might have to look at this. So it's $75,000 for the cost, professional learning across all these areas, and then your benefit increases, payroll increases. I don't believe there was anything else major in that cost center that would account for that.
So what accounted for the increase, though? If you've only got, because you did 2 major changes, instructional technology and additional
So she
professional
wants to
learning
know the
funding.
difference. Yeah, salaries, benefits, the $75,000, professional learning increase.
Because that's almost,
Yeah,
regular instruction is only a $755,000 increase, and that one is a $393,000 increase. And it has to be much smaller.
yeah, I'm wondering what else is that? Why don't we keep
That's
going
okay,
and they'll
keep going,
look.
yeah, but just for you.
And they'll look. So that is in that one. If we move to system administration, and I'll have them keep looking for that. There's no substantive changes. This is school board, central office, our services in the superintendent's office, business. And then if we go to school. So another major change and proposal that we have is in the area of school administration. The biggest increase that we have here is the additional assistant principal at Ellsworth Elementary Middle School. One of the things that we've learned over the last year, year and a half through the strategic planning process is that families want more intense communication faster. And I really do not ask my principals to sit in their office and be on email all the time. It's not effective school leadership. I want them out and about in the school, and I want them in classrooms. With the increase in behaviors, increase in bullying, and a variety of things that schools now have to deal with, we do feel like, based on staff input and parent input, that we need additional help at EEMS. What we would propose doing is like a school within a school model. So prior to the construction of this school, we had 3 schools, 3 principals, and an additional assistant principal. So there were 4 administrators. I get why we tried doing 2 and 1 and 1 and 2, but it is not effective. We are the only school in Maine that is pre-K to 8 and is this size. Most schools that are this size are grades 6 through 8 or grades K through 4. We are asking leaders to manage a building with needs ranging from 4-year-olds to 8th graders at a magnitude that is very different than small community schools that have 1 classroom for a grade level. So in this model, we would have 1 principal, and then we would have 3 assistant principals. The newly created position would be pre-K to 2. We would have an assistant principal for grades 3 through 5, which puts those grade levels together, and then grades 6 through 8 for a total of 4 administrators. We feel that that would be the best model moving forward. Some people ask, why didn't you do 2 principals, 2 assistant principals, why this model? The board and I felt very strongly that this would allow for 1 vision at the principal level, which was complicated when there were 2. Then the expectations are the same throughout the school. And then each assistant principal would be responsible for the students, families, and staff in their grade area, answering to 1 single vision of the school. Also, when we look at the curriculum changes we're making at the pre-K to 2 level, that takes a very specialty type of knowledge base. And with the expansion of pre-K and having 2 classrooms at the Moore Center, we feel this is the right time to do this. We'll also talk about later that by FY28, we have to assume FAPE for all 3 and 4-year-olds in Ellsworth, which means we will be responsible for special education case management of 3 and 4-year-olds. It is the best and the right thing to do for children in our community. I truly believe that. We're one of the only states in the country that isn't doing this already. We're woefully behind. But that is going to come with an additional layer of case management and expertise that we're going to have. So we feel like this is the right time to start implementing those things with the expansion of pre-K. I see you guys looking at me. Thank you.
So it's included, but then we have the revenue
Thank you.
offset this year.
Okay. So to back up to Michelle's question. So the other major increase in student and staff support at about $80,000, right?
Plus 88.
Plus benefits. So right now, we have an instructional coach in our budget. And last year, she was given the incredible opportunity to be a coach for the state of Maine. So what you will see here on your white sheet is we added a replacement for her this year, but her salary for the second person is fully paid for by the state, so we have it under revenue underneath. So about $95,000 of the increase that you see is for the 99?
109.
Oh, 109, thank you, quick math. So about 109,000 of that 300,000 increase in the cost center that Michelle asked about is offset by revenue under miscellaneous revenue on the bottom. She is currently working for the state as an instructional coach. She was selected, given the opportunity. And the deal is, we keep her salary in our budget, but the Department of Education fully funds it. And she does it for like a 2 or 3 year cycle, 2 years. This will be the last year of that. But we still needed that work done, so we hired someone else. So it's gonna look like an increase on the top, but the revenue offsets it on the bottom.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then the professional learning, okay. Transportation. So, like our facilities, we are constantly needing, when we purchased, or when we left the RSU, we purchased our own buses. That was back in 2015. We are getting ourselves on a replacement cycle for buses. Again, we receive subsidy for these to help offset the cost. So in the FY26 budget, we do have built-in lease payments for 2 additional buses for buses that are at 150,000 miles or over that cannot be on the road. So we need to replace those. So the bus lease payments and interest payments for 2 additional buses are in the budget, along with the request for 2 additional vans. So one thing that I push transportation on is, why do we need 2 additional vans? We have a growing population of students who cannot be in school the full student day. So we have a lot of students that are on what is called legally abbreviated school days, which means they attend for 2 hours or they attend for 3 hours because that's all they can manage. We have to provide transportation to those students, and if their behaviors are such that they cannot be on the bus, they have to have special transportation. And we have vans that are on their last legs and additional runs for students. So we're requesting 2 vans in this budget so that we can meet our obligation for special transportation runs for students. The bus routing software would be also a substantive change in new. It's approximately $20,000 in the budget. How many times have you heard that people are tired of getting a call about bus 17 being late, even though their children aren't on bus 17? So this bus routing software is new across the state. We kind of hit pause on it a couple of years ago when it came out. We wanted to see what kind of impact it had. What this software does is you input all this information in it, and then it tells you, are you running the most efficient routes for your population and landmass? It maps out the routes, and parents can download an app on their phone, and then whatever bus their child is on, they can map it and see where the bus is. So if it's late or if it's on time, they can see that, or if it's ahead. And so that would take a substantial burden off of our front office staff with the calls that we get. And with changes in runs, this would enable us to be able to make any changes in the software. The driver would have it up, and they'd be able to see their mapping software in live time. So if we were down a driver and needed to change routes for that day, that does all of it for us. So that is also in this budget. Under facilities and maintenance, you'll see a major decrease. Part of this is because of the change we made last year to do the TELP, in that we now have a little bit of an increase on the debt service side, which is in another slide. So although it shows that we have a $200,000 decrease here, some of that you'll see in debt service because we will have our first payment on our TELP. I will say we have a substantive number of projects that I met with the City Council Finance Committee about last Friday and talked to them about the possibility of doing a phase 2 with EMC. There are a wide list of things that we had originally put in this version of the budget. It was in version 1 and version 2. Is that the wind?
That's the fire
Fire
department.
Oh, my goodness, okay. In phase 2, we would look at finalizing the window project at Ellsworth High School, the final phase of the roof. It would repair heat pumps at EEMS. It would put all of our integrations and system controls into one unit, which we desperately need so that it's not proprietary and we control it. And it would work on the lighting project at the track. And so we are going to be looking to do a phase 2, which will come to the council for approval. So all of those projects are not in the facilities line as single item capital improvement projects. They are pulled out. They total about $1.1 million. We think this is a much more effective way to get facilities work done in as quick a manner as possible that is not cost prohibitive to budgets. And so you will see the first phase of the TELP payment under debt service, which is the next slide. So the major changes in debt service is Avery Lane payments will start for the purchase of our Avery Lane office building that houses central office and adult education. And then the first payment of our phase 1 of the TELP for EMC will also start in the FY26 budget. So those are the major changes in that. Last but not least, other, which is your food service department and your school nutrition program. You will see a major increase there, and that is for one reason and one reason only, even though there's a second thing listed. The cost of food has skyrocketed, and even though we get reimbursement for breakfast and lunch so that it's free for students, it doesn't pay for everything. Okay, it doesn't fully cover the cost of the purchases of food. So that increase offset is there, as well as our nutrition software that we use to manage our food service program. The software is obsolete. We have to upgrade to new software as well. Adult education is not part of the general fund budget, but it is something in a program that Ellsworth has always been really proud of, that we're really proud of. I believe our offerings through adult education are a steal for what that little mighty program offers across our community for citizens in a variety of areas. Now, if we break down our budget allocations, so when we looked at what are fixed costs, what are things that we have to do, because you have to have them to run, you have to have electricity in your buildings, you have to make your debt service payments, you have to pay your people. 91% of what we are asking for are what we would consider fixed costs in our budget. And then 9% are your variables throughout. Some of the things that I talked a little bit about that we wanted to put in the budget but did not, things that we either cut that you won't see, so that you know we didn't just put everything in that everybody wanted. I think there's sometimes that thought that we just put everything in and ask for it. As we've already talked about, based on enrollment, there were 2 classroom teachers and the 3 programs at HCTC that we felt like, based on enrollment, were prudent for us to take from the budget. We have no paving projects in this upcoming year's budget. I still argue that HCTC definitely needs their upper lot paved, but we feel like we should wait 1 more year. Typically, we have paging projects on a rotation, but at $55,000 to $100,000 a pop, we decided that right now we had other needs that were more important than that. So we're gonna wait and hit pause. We had a lot of equipment through our facilities program that is starting to go, that long-term we're going to have to think about removing and changing. We do all of our own sidewalk snow removal at our schools, ride-on scrubbers, things of that nature, things that we need for our fields. So we are starting to look at how can we get on a more solid rotation for those things. So a lot of those things were removed from the budget. As I talked about, our first iteration of the budget had another First Academy instructor because we do have a wait list. But we felt strongly, let's start with a support person and not absorb the cost of another teacher until we have 2 years of data to really look at it. We want to make our decisions based on data. Desperate need for more administrative assistant help. The requirement that our special education teachers have and administrators have for paperwork is continuing to rise in comparison to other classroom teachers. So that is something that we're thinking about long-term. 2 flooring projects, one at HCTC and one at the library, are things that we would like to do eventually, but they're not needs right now. So we took those out of the budget and we talked about equipment. I've kind of touched on a few of these things, but wanted to talk about some things that we are considering for future planning, some of which we're implementing in this budget. Some are things that we have to start planning for long-term. Our bus garage lease does expire next year, so that is something that we are talking about and wondering what we're going to do. HCTC and adult education are continuing to have huge demands around workforce training and workforce development. So trying to decide how we're going to meet those needs from our businesses and our communities for workforce development. I already talked about the law goes into effect for FY28 for us to provide special education services case management for 3 and 4-year-olds. We could start implementing that now and get subsidy for that. We've taken the approach, nope, we're gonna let other people implement it, try it out, learn from people's pitfalls, and we are not planning to implement that until it's law in FY28. We wanna see how this really unfolds and how the money follows this first before we do it. Expanded virtual academy and alternative education. There's a huge demand for us to expand alternative ed into the middle school. So that's something we're thinking and talking strategically about. Recruitment and retention of educator workforce. A lot of communities are looking at contracts and negotiated agreements and trying to figure out how they're going to compete with neighboring school districts. It used to be when you had a teacher opening, you'd have anywhere from 20 to 30 applicants. You're now lucky if you can count applicants on one hand. It's even less for administrators. And then continued safety preparedness, both in terms of emergency management planning, but also handling the extreme behaviors that we're dealing with currently. Then, in full transparency, we've talked a lot about this the last couple of years. So every year, the state puts out their per pupil costs for school districts. They put out the statewide average. So this is public information. It's on the Department of Ed dashboard. This is kind of showing you, originally I had just Hancock County school departments on here, and talking to Charlie, I know that Orono and Skowhegan were communities that have been used in other comparisons. So we looked at those as well, and also grabbed Brewer and Bangor. They're neighboring, they're not in Hancock County, but thought it was important to show you. I think it's really important. I know that the hit to taxation the last couple of years has been large, and I will show some graphics around that in a minute. But I think it's really important for people to realize that our per pupil expenditures are really low comparatively to other communities, even with the big jumps the last 2 years. And so next year, I think we'll close the gap more, because this is a year behind, it's FY24. But I think it's important for people to understand that we're behind state average and we're behind school systems that are likewise in size enrollment-wise, but also community-wise as well, and that are our competitors when it comes to recruiting for high school, but also recruiting our workforce as well. The next slide is going to be small for the community to see, but I think it really paints a picture. So 2015 is the year that we start having data, because it's the year we left the RSU and formed our own school department, okay? So that was the first year we had our own Ellsworth School Department budget. And this shows you over time, the top shows you our general fund percentage increase every year since 2015. And then the bottom shows you the taxation local appropriation percentages. What I think is really important, when you look at this, okay, and we calculated this earlier, the blue, which you probably can see on your handout, people at home may not be able to see, kind of shows this steady line. And you see the red kind of dip around. When you look at even our big increases the last couple of years, our average since we left the RSU are really low. And so when you look at cost of living increases and negotiated agreements and how much that has changed with legislation that has mandated a minimum salary for educators, that's actually pretty good overall. So I know that these hits were really high, but for several years, you did 0.4 increase, 0.41, negative 0.9, negative 1.97. You can't sustain that. You can't sustain that. And so we are, I believe, on a good downward trend to try to stabilize this over time, but we are still making up and trying to catch ground. When you look at the bottom of your white sheet, to kind of talk through this, I won't belabor a ton of this, but your mill rate expectation, additional local, state CTE allocation, state subsidy allocation, state debt service reimbursement, and non-state funded debt service, those are pretty much fixed. Those are given to us from the state. So your state debt service reimbursement is the amount we receive in subsidy for EEMS. That's your construction debt payment that we get from the state. And then the above is the match that we make for EEMS. And then we get an allocated amount just for Hancock County Technical Center. You receive state subsidy for the running of your CTE school. Because Ellsworth owns and governs Hancock County Technical Center, we do receive subsidy for that school. Your other lines to talk about is general fund balance forward and CTE fund balance forward. We've worked really hard the last couple of years, and we believe we should put 1.6 million towards this year's budget to help offset the amount to taxation. CTE balance forward is not as fruitful as we would maybe like, but we did have an over expenditure last year in that area. So we're proposing 25,000 in balance forward. We are flat funding our tuition revenue. We believe that's pretty reasonable based on figures and enrollment data coming in. CTE assessment is the offset for career and technical education. So because we offer Hancock County Technical Center to students from other school departments, those school departments pay our per pupil cost to help offset the HCTC budget. So whatever we budget for, whatever we receive in subsidy, the remaining amount is divided up per pupil to help offset that specific budget. So we anticipate revenue in that area to be around $95,000 for next year. Your food service allocation, your revenues have to match your expenditures. That's the way the food service industry works for budgets and school departments, so that's what that number is. And then on the bottom, for miscellaneous revenue, that's where $110,000 is our instructional coach, because the DOE is paying that salary. State agency client revenues have gone up. We've been billing for more students in that area. So as of right now, even though our budget to budget increase is 8.28, our grand total local appropriation would be 6.94 to taxation. So I'm done talking at you. So this is the time when I answer questions and/or get your feedback. And then the plan would be that our team would present a final school budget to the school board April 8th, and then come before you for final determinations at your April, I think it's the 21st council meeting. Okay, we're all good. Let's go.
Digest.
It's a lot.
I have a general question. Does this budget make Ellsworth Public Schools better? And is it advancing, you mentioned a strategic plan, is this advancing that?
Yes. So we actually have worked really, really hard on this budget. And in my opinion, this budget moves our system forward in ways that we haven't been able to the last couple of years, both from a fiscal standpoint, an academic standpoint, workforce readiness, all the different parts and pieces. I believe this moves us forward. I think it's what the community has been demanding. And I am actually really excited about this budget. I felt like the first 2 years I did this, one, new at it, two, trying to fix and figure some things out and really try to make up for a lot of deficiencies. I finally feel like we have people in place that are planful, that are looking ahead, that are strategically planning. I mean, everything from equipment to field maintenance to curriculum rotations, furniture rotations, instructional technology. I feel like we've always just patched holes as we've gone. I feel like we've put Band-Aids on things, which to me is not cost efficient or effective. It doesn't lead to better outcomes for students. And this budget, I feel like, okay, we are gonna do some things for the students and families in Ellsworth. And I feel like we've worked really hard to take out things, because of course we don't show every decrease in every line. But I feel like we've taken out a lot of things that don't move us forward or are holding us back or are not efficient or are just not showing improvement in data. And so I feel really good about that with this budget. John, hi.
Hi, great presentation.
Thank you.
Again, 3 years in a row of incredible information and really
Thank you.
highlighting how much work you've put in and this entire crew and board and staff and everybody has put in. It's really remarkable, and it's been an education for me and for us as well, just learning about how the school works. It's also really impactful to hear about the changes, because you started mentioning last year the needs, the special ed increases and everything, and it's not something that, you know, I do now have a kid, but he's not in school age, and so it's not something that I've had to think about, and a lot of people don't, but it's really, it can be an incredible difficulty and burden on you and the staff. But I do have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
The debt service
Yes.
questions. So Avery Lane's coming up. Is everything kind of like tidy with the old leases we were paying to get everything into Avery Lane? And do you have a sense of how much savings that's been?
So we were talking about that the other day. Until we have a year in there, I mean, lease payments to mortgage payment, if you want to call it that, we're going to have a savings. But when we look at electricity, our lights changing to LED, we're not going to really know how much of that savings until we have a year under our belts. So that is something that, once we have that, we want to show council and the finance committee so that they can see what that looks like. But just the lease payment alone with some of the expenses. And if you haven't been to Avery Lane, the space is so forward-thinking, which is one of the things I'm really excited about. Because over time, our school department is going to change, grow, and evolve. And this building helps us, puts us in a position, even if we get a new HCTC, let's hope we get on the construction list this summer. Even if we get that and we can expand and move, we have so many other spatial needs. And so long-term, I think it's an investment for sure, and the fact that we own it.
Just on debt service in general as well, I know you mentioned a second phase potentially of the...
Yes.
I forget the acronym, but do you have a sense of the total debt service that the school holds, and are things coming up in completion of...
Yep, and so we looked at that a little bit today. So we have, when we look at it, our final payment for EEMS comes in 2029. So that will be a huge chunk of debt that will come off the books. And that was 20 years. We have school revolving renovation for HCTC, which was 0% interest rate, that's 1.8, but the state covers a percentage of that. We have our school bus for $116,000, which is total financed. District-wide copiers is $188,000. Phase 1 of the TELP is $2 million. And then the 2 buses that we purchased in 2024, that's when it was initiated, are about $128,000, $129,000, and $125,000 total. And then Avery Lane will be the 1.2 million.
This is if you have any sense of the total,
Grand total?
well, and more importantly, benchmarked against other school districts.
That I don't know, John. In terms of the total, I don't know, do you have the grand total on your spreadsheet?
I do.
Because I can't total that in my head.
So without Avery Lane, we're looking at about 4.7 million. That's remaining in debt, not the original issued amount. And add 1.2 million to that. Our annual payments for next year will be about $600,000, including Avery Lane roughly. But as of FY '30, in another 4 years, that is going to drop to about, $370,000, $380,000 in terms of annual payments.
Thanks.
That's why I bring my finance people.
I just have a bunch of clarifying questions as we digest all of that. And just one point, the drop to 373, that's assuming no new debt, and I'm just wondering,
The what, hon?
the drop in the payments for the debt goes from 600,000, and then in fiscal year 30, it drops to 373, but that's assuming no new
Correct.
debt, and there's probably gonna be some more,
Yes.
I'm assuming there's some more work to
Yes.
do there. What is VPA equipment?
Thank you. Visual and Performing Arts.
Okay, I tried to guess.
No, I know, I forget education acronyms.
Well, I did figure out what the CTE was, because he used it twice and then said it out loud, so. I need to understand PE in the EEMS.
Yep.
You said, if I heard you right, there were 2 teachers, each with 500 students.
Yep.
But there are only 724 students enrolled.
So for the PE offerings, they take PE multiple times a week, okay? And there are electives at the middle school level. So they are grading each of them over 500 students. Some of those students may be in 2 classes.
Okay, so students have multiple
Yes.
options. Thank you.
And then one of those teachers also teaches health as well on top of that.
Okay. You mentioned the purchase of the buses and the vans, and we've had extensive conversations here about leasing over purchasing, and I'm wondering if that was looked at for the vans.
So right now, we have a general total amount for 2 vans. I think we budgeted about 40,000 each. And we would, depending on if that goes or not, then we would talk about how we're gonna, I mean, those we would buy outright, correct? Typically for vans, we buy outright.
Yeah, I'm happy to maybe connect on the lease program that we're going to maybe there's some.
It appears to be cost-effective for others, and it's like if it,
To do what? Sorry.
to
Basically-
lease instead of purchase.
Yeah, to go into, looking at vehicle maintenance, long-term kind of fuel efficiency, as EVs come and go, what makes best sense there. And we've entered into an agreement with Enterprise on a lot more of our fleets just to have that, like, all the data done behind from them. So you don't have a situation which just happened to us recently where we have 5 vehicles that are so rusted out they can't even be sent for inspection anymore. And we lost kind of all the value on those. So how do we maximize the value and minimize to kind of be in a lease cycle with our vehicles? We were considering it mostly with our municipal fleets. We're thinking about some software called Fleetio on, some things you can't lease, like a big fire truck and other pieces.
Right,
So
right.
you can't do that for everything, but what categories, we have whole spreadsheets now of the current condition of all our vehicles, when they shouldn't, a whole system to manage that. That's pretty easy, but it might make sense for the school's fleet to look into that too.
And then related to that, you mentioned the bus routing software, which sounds amazing, and I'm wondering if there's cost savings that comes with that, with more efficient runs, maybe fewer.
That's the hope,
buses.
long-term, is that the complication with Ellsworth currently is how big we are geographically,
Yep.
and the miles that our buses have to cover, and then the complexities of different housing developments and how those impact long-term, how we do that. So we're also trying to plan ahead for those as well, because we are involved in those conversations. But yes, the hope would be that with the bus software, we have the most efficient routes that we're running to help capitalize on savings, yes.
Okay. And it's another instance, you all have heard me talk about the cost of sprawl. More school buses is part of being spread out all over the place. It's just the reality of it. A question you didn't bring up, but I read the newspaper like everybody else does. When you talked about the food budget and we saw that increase, I assumed that somehow you were trying to factor in the news, there's a pause in the local school to food program.
So that's purchasing, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, those funds are specifically for buying local produce from farms. And so it isn't that we're getting a cut to food in general, it's who we buy the food from.
So you're gonna have to shift away from local farmers.
Because that's more expensive, yes.
Yeah.
And so that had offset that cost
We were
of
just-
buying.
We were just supporting local farms. It was a great grant, and we utilized a great product, and we're still able to fulfill all our nutritional needs. It's just not at a local level as easy.
Right, yeah, it was
Yes.
a wonderful, it benefited the community in a lot of ways.
A lot of ways, for sure.
So you're just gonna pivot away. If you don't mind me, keep going. School administration, I could not keep up with you.
Sorry.
In the new assistant principals, can you give me just the current count of principal and assistants?
So currently,
new.
we have 1 principal, 2 assistant principals. This would
Okay.
be an additional assistant principal to go 1 and 3.
Okay, so you're adding 1 assistant.
Yes, a lot of people thought add a second principal. I think it's more cost-effective and makes more educational sense to do the school within a school model.
Now, I understood what you said about like one
Yeah.
umbrella and then the
Yes.
3 subsets.
Yes.
In the system administration,
Yep.
it went fast. You
Yep.
said there's no major changes. It's an 8% increase.
Yep.
And so I
So
have no
part of that-
details to understand what that is.
Yep, part of that is administrative assistant help at Avery Lane that we've done this year, that will carry into next year, that was not budgeted this year, but we had major needs at the new Avery Lane, and so that's an administrative assistant position.
So
That
it's a-
wasn't in this current budget.
So a new admin assistant.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I would also say all of the salaries and benefit
Right,
changes
the
for the
usual.
entire Avery Lane office and administrators
Okay.
is all in that line.
All right. Could we see the debt service, just to be able to see that, again, there are a lot of numbers coming at us. It's just to understand it. What's sticking with me is $188,000 for printer leases, and it's just, it helps to see everything in context.
So, I'd have to share, the problem is.
I mean, like in follow-up. I don't
Oh,
mean
okay,
now.
yes.
So, or let me clarify,
I can email it.
for future, if we could look at that.
Yep.
We did an exercise a couple months ago in
Yeah.
the council where we looked at total cities.
Okay,
It helps, it's
That's
context and it helps us understand
sure.
and hang on to the numbers as we go forward. Another question, adult ed, how is it paid for? Where is its budget if it's not here?
Hold on, I'm just making
Yep.
notes.
It is there, it's expensed.
Yes.
Well,
She
if there
just
was
doesn't-
like the slide with no details, and I didn't.
Well,
like,
because
what do I do with
that budget isn't run the same as the general fund budget, that's why. And so that budget, adult education, is outside of the general fund. That's why it has its own category underneath, under total, and then it says adult education and grand total. Adult education is not budgeted for in the general fund, meaning the subsidy does not have anything to do with adult education. It's a program that Ellsworth valued when we left the RSU
Yeah.
and fund outside of that.
So I see the revenue, where are the expenses for it? Where do they
Oh,
exist?
at the top, you can show her, Tammy,
Thank you. Thank you.
between
That was
total
an
and
easy
grand
one.
total. So that cost center, Nancy, because it's not run through the general fund, it's separated out.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Which
I
looks
just-
weird, I know.
Again, looking at a spreadsheet for the first time.
Yes,
Can I just say that that's not the total budget
Yeah.
for adult ed, that's just the portion that we're asking to be funded through local allocation.
right.
So we don't show the full adult ed budget because it is funded through subsidy and
Workforce.
they're self-funded workforce. So we only show on here the portion that is
Okay.
added to the local allocation.
Does the school board see it all to understand the
Yep.
context and all? Okay. I think just a couple more. Trends in enrollment, just to understand, you said that you know,
Yes.
you're letting go of second and fourth grade classrooms.
Yep.
So I don't know if it's the past 3 years, what you're projecting for the future. I don't know if you do it by classroom, by class, or by
Yes.
school, but just to understand.
How
we
we
have
make those
Fewer students than we
decisions.
have in the past.
So it's a variety of things. So first, the younger students are, the smaller you want class size because you're teaching early learning, literacy, writing, math. And so there are projected classroom sizes that are considered economically and instructionally what's best for students. So what we do is as students get older, those class size averages typically go up for what is best practice. So this grade 2 class is smaller. And also over time, we look at special education trends, multilanguage trends. These 2 grade levels are smaller and have less complexities. So we felt like what will happen is grade 2 will average 15 to 16 students with the reduction in staff, and grade 4 will have 17.
So it sounds
On
like
average.
it's a flow of that certain age class more
Yes.
than.
Yes.
So I think still to look at the trends in enrollment,
Yep.
and then another clarifying question, I think I know the answer to, but it stuck. When you were talking about in the total enrollment sheet, there was higher than if you add up the numbers because some students go to Ellsworth High
HCTC.
School and HCTC. I assume those that aren't in that doubling, so to speak, go to other high schools outside and come
Correct.
here.
So there's about, typically on year to year, 90 to 100, 110 Ellsworth students are in that HCTC count. It
Okay.
fluctuates, but that's on average. The rest come to us from all the other Hancock County high schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then another request for in the future is, what we get from the other departments to help understand this, even a single sentence explanation for each of these revenues. I was trying to
okay.
keep up with you. What's the difference between an assessment and a tuition, and
So like
what
we
is the
did-
local, what is the,
So like we did with the cost centers, you want something for the revenue
I
side
haven't even had a
also?
chance to look at what you did for the
Okay.
cost centers. Yeah, give me 2 sentences so I understand, or 1 sentence,
Okay.
what each of these are. And then again, there's just CTE, I've got to look at my notes to remember what it is.
Career and technical.
Just make it easy for us to understand the information you're giving us would be great. 2 more questions. Looking at the budget, looking at the costs for sewer and water, so the school does pay Ellsworth Water Department for sewer and water.
Yes.
Water, not sewer.
Water, not sewer. Sewer only.
Water only.
Where is it here? Okay, I'll ask for you, I want to understand what's going on there. And then the cost of internet, do you use Kobe? Are you in the service area for the city-owned broadband infrastructure? We're looking for additional,
Yes.
do we have additional
Oh,
capacity?
yes.
Are you using
Yes.
it?
Yeah, we are, yes, our internet comes through Kobe.
For all the schools?
Yes.
Fabulous, thank you.
Potted plant, not a girl.
Okay. And then, just to wind things out, miscellaneous revenue, what is SPED?
Special education.
Okay, okay. That's it, thank you.
You're welcome.
I said a lot to digest.
You have some questions?
Yeah, I have a, for the First Academies.
Yes.
Programming. So is that, now do students that do First Academy also come to the school at some point, or is it entirely remote?
Depends on the student. It's very individualized. Students are given the option, and the goal is to reacclimate them to school. Some are 100% remote.
Okay. And is it primarily, is there like, is it COVID kids, I mean, the lack of a better term, or is it?
It's
all-
a variety. I would say that that's some of it. I would say in some situations, it's family situation, and dramatic family situations, that students that need help that otherwise wouldn't get an education. And then those students, in some instances, I would say some students would be dropouts.
Yeah,
And then the mental health piece as well.
yeah. And now, do students enrolled in that academy count towards overall enrollment?
Yes.
And do their participation in that programming impact your like projections on class sizes? Like if there's, is that part of it as well?
Not yet, because they're high school students predominantly. I think there's only one middle school
Okay,
student
so-
currently, two middle school
And
students
it's
enrolled.
not elementary, it's not, okay, so
No.
it's middle school. high
Yeah,
school.
it's predominantly high school.
And I guess this may, I don't know if it's, is there a reason it's not under the special education classification as far as?
They're not all sped students.
Yeah, so it's a mixture.
So it's a mix.
Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah. Right.
Those kind of, that striking number of about, I think it was 51 students who are unhoused or classified in that
Correct.
category. Is the school working directly with either Ellsworth's GA department or other nonprofits?
She and I have lots of conversations. We're really lucky. We have a lot of generous people in our community. And in working with Tina, with the chamber, and with certain business owners and hotels. And then the funding through the McKinney-Vento Act, we do receive some grant funding to help some families with either rent payments or electricity payments as well. So,
Does a lot of
yes.
that admin work fall on the teachers or the school's admin or
I
on
would
GA?
say our assistant superintendent, finance, and then our school social workers. Yeah.
How many teachers are there currently amongst the, across the school system?
I'm gonna have to get back to you, John,
Okay.
because I don't want to give you the wrong number. Teachers system-wide?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I may have it. Next question, I'll look.
Sure, I have one. Oh, do you have a notion of the average salary increase for teachers year over year or this past year? Because during these budget hearings, we start to hear a lot of either union negotiated or cost of living increases or
This is
other
why I should
increases. It's
have.
good to have that comparison.
So I know RSU 24 opened their contract for teachers and just completely redid theirs to try to be more competitive. There is legislation currently to start the minimum salary for teachers at 52.5, which would be an increase. I don't know if that will go or not. So that I can give you accurate information. for teachers. 4% for 25-26 increase. And then when I look at teachers, actual, according to EPS, 92.9. And so the .9 is oftentimes positions are spread across areas. So that does not include some positions that are on the teacher negotiated agreement, like guidance counselors, librarian, those are their own separate category. But I can bring everything for staffing next time if you want, or I can send it to council.
Either way,
Either way, okay.
you said 52.5 thousand average, so
That's proposed
Teacher.
legislation for
Okay.
next year.
that'd be the increase too.
For 25-26, I can tell you, a starting teacher in Ellsworth with a bachelor's is 44,994. For 25-26, step 0.
Can you repeat that number again? I'm sorry.
$44,994 for 25-26. So somebody fresh out of college with a bachelor's with no experience in teaching, that's the base.
It's tough.
That's awful.
What's the top?
I was going to say, what does the range go up to for experienced and more?
Top of scale with a bachelor's, 64,061. So top of scale is 17 years in education.
And in this economy of it being very difficult to find teachers, where are you expecting fresh bachelor?
I think it's going to
degree?
be a variety, John. I think teachers' contract negotiations next year are going to be quite competitive, to be honest. I mean, we're going to have to look at that. I think right now, the trends that I'm seeing is it's a really small pool coming out of colleges. Even education departments at colleges and universities are dwindling their enrollment as well. And so it's really a mix. It's actually people that have been teaching that either want to move closer to where they live and don't want to commute. So typically you see more experienced applicants than brand new, but we did have a couple of brand new fresh out of school this year as well. So it is a mix.
So I'd like to expand on just the total number of teachers, but the total number of employees, maybe over the last 3 years, like how many
Yes.
employees that we do have. And not for right now, but for the future.
Yeah.
And so your non-union employees, do you have an estimate of the COLA increase for them?
It ranges. So people that are non-unionized are ranging anywhere from 3 to 8% for this budget cycle, based on their history of raises over the last few years, and then looking at like counterparts, it's a range from 3 to 8. 8 being few people, mostly 3 to 4.
Anyone else?
When do we hear back from you all?
Is
This is pretty much, it's kind of my next question is, Steve is our senior council member. I think you're the only two-termer here. I don't know if you remember the time when the city and the school kind of presented at the same time, or if it was always school was in first and then city kind of came thereafter.
I think it's been school, that city.
But that's kind of one of the reasons that we decided to fast-track this process based on last year, and I'm assuming the previous years before that, was that so that the council could kind of see both sides of the budget before getting locked into the school side, and then if there's a cut exercise, there's only one part of the budget to cut upon. Plus, as you can, if you go to page 22 in your other books, kind of with the overview, just to kind of essentially get to brass taxes here. So now we're in kind of a place where we can, we're not there yet. We still have some of the city side of things to go through. But we now have the biggest portion of the mill rate, or the city budget. So last year, FY '25, the school appropriation was 14.6 million, and the city municipal side of things was 11.6 million. This year, the school appropriation would be about 15.6 million. This is at a 7% increase, and the city side of things in 2020, or in the initial version of the budget, and this is when I cut pretty deep for the first go around, is negative 1.2%. Nate and I were tooling around with things in here. When you add the school budget, you add, this is without capital. This is also like no fire department increase, no police department increase. This was a pretty deep cut, but so we're probably around 1 or 2% for the city side, municipal side of an increase, and then I factor in the 6% or 7% for the school. Where are we comfortable at, and where can we find? For me, 2.9% was the inflation for last year, and in some ways, there's in FY 2024, the school had a 16.9% increase to their budget. In FY '24, the cities had a 16.6% increase. '25, it's an 8.9% increase for the schools. '25 for the cities, a 5% increase. And so where do we want to be at now? If we're going to be at that 3 or 4% level, and the school stays at 6.94, if I'm going to try to bring that total levy rate down to around a 4% or a 3%, I'm going to have to cut deeper on the 11.5 million or the 12 million kind of side of things, or the school and I are going to have to share things. Or is the city council comfortable with the school's 16.94%, and we'll kind of really focus on honing down the municipal side to keep the mill rate. 6.9.
You didn't see Amy's face, I look at you and I can see her face, like, no.
6.9, so,
Like, did I read that wrong?
So for me, if there's a 1% less in the school budget, it makes it easier for me to keep around that 3% without having to go into capital, without having to go. I think because of the conversations we had about TIF funding and unallocated spending there, I think the rec department, I can, make budget neutral still. And there's a question of, can I use some of the surplus TIF to defray other expenses that are econ dev related? I could go that route to kind of save more money on the city side, but at the same time, to me, that violates kind of the spirit of what those TIF districts were designed for. They weren't designed to defray other spending from other departments. They were designed to be spent on econ dev specifically. So to me, there's I'm just getting this number, so I'm going to need till next week to probably calculate where we're at, get like a new city budget overview that's more up to date. But what kind of direction do we want to give the school? Because they're going to have to know by early April.
When were you planning on meeting to finalize?
The school board has to vote at their April 8th meeting. And so what I will say is any feedback that we can get over the course of tonight and then next week is going to be critical for us so that we can really make some decisions. Because if we were, if you were to say tonight, Amy, you got to get to 5%, okay, you have to get to 5%, we'd have to find $285,000 to get to 5%. And so the sooner I know what the kind of goal is, we have to really make some hard decisions.
So I got a couple of questions, if I could.
Yeah.
Before we answer that question, because by the way, best presentation we have ever had, and I've been here for a long time.
Thank you.
It was exceptional, it really and truly was. And
Thank you.
probably the most honest one I've ever seen too, and I really, really appreciate the information, I really do.
Thank you.
I'm trying to figure out this, and you know what, I know I should remember how to do this, but I don't. The mill rate, the real mill rate expectation, I know what that is, and then the additional local, those are the requirements. There must be somewhere in here, an additional funding, because I'm adding these numbers and I'm not coming to the 1.1 million 21.
This,
So, I'm doing something wrong, I'm sure.
You have to add in the non-state funded debt service, that's local. So everything that's local has local in
Ah,
parentheses
that's
after
where
it.
it is. Okay,
And the
I
food
didn't see it.
service. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The two positions that you said you're not going to have, are they leaving the system or are they being moved within the system?
I will say it worked out nicely because they have resigned.
Oh.
So grade 2 and grade 4 are two teachers who have resigned that probably we would have had to look at transferring people and moving people around. And it worked out that it's those exact grade levels.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yes. So no, we're not cutting teaching jobs. We're looking at attrition and we'll move people based on what we need. But it's those two specific grade levels that based on enrollment makes the most sense.
Okay. The only thing that I would say, and again, I just can't tell you how much I appreciate this detail, is, and I said this to the council at the last workshop, we are under an incredible amount of pressure this year
Yep.
to not have large increases. Even, there's going to be more money because there's an increase in assessments, but that doesn't mean that that is the same tax bill. That means that increase in assessment is an increase in tax dollars that people have to pay. And so it's been, as you probably have seen from some city council meetings, it's been a heck of a year.
Yeah.
As far as that is concerned. So in my request, and this is just me, not the council, but I would really appreciate if there were additional cuts, and I don't want to say get down to 5% because to me that's an arbitrary number.
Yeah.
And I hate arbitrary numbers.
Yep.
But I would appreciate if there were some things that you could provide that would help with
Okay.
that situation.
Yep.
But that's just me, so I don't know what the other councilors.
I would agree with that theme, that trend of, we need to be thoughtful every year,
Yeah.
but, yeah.
If I can add to,
Sure.
with Michelle's request, and, if you do come back and provide a lower number, can you show us what that means as far as what
Okay.
would be, not be provided for, so we can get a sense of, down X means they'll get a talented teacher or something like that, just to
Yeah.
get a sense.
Yeah.
Well, what's nice is that over the next couple of weeks, we will have more firm enrollment data as well. So kindergarten registration's open right now, pre-K lottery is open right now, we're enrolling CTE students. So we are going to continue, no matter what, this is still in motion for us, and we're gonna continue to analyze things right up until that drop dead April 8th date, so that everything has really been looked at with straight face tests, like we've really looked at everything to determine what the most needed things are.
Because I see you didn't have any change in tuition,
Yeah.
and that can be good and bad.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we try to typically be a little conservative with that because kids sometimes double enroll at 3 high schools. And so you don't want to count on things, so you build in kind of a moving target for that as well. But yes, those numbers are going to start coming to be more firm over the next couple of weeks. That's the other problem with this tight timeline, is enrollment.
The tight April deadline, I remember from previous years, was so that we could get things on the ballot by the ballot
Correct.
date. This year, I think the only thing, though, is the school budget. Nothing
Correct.
else. Probably have to check with the clerks, but does that mean we get any more leniency? I don't know. So maybe we can push
She's
it.
already.
She's checked and called, and we've rechecked and called,
you've already gone
and
down
yes,
that road.
we've tried. Because we do realize, one, it's a burden on city personnel to try to fast track their stuff to match us. And so I think that team has worked exceptionally hard because of our timeline. But it's at a cost to the city. I mean, we're going to be potentially the only question on the ballot in June, and it costs taxpayers a lot of money. to have that vote. And the referendum question asking, do we want to continue doing this, doesn't come up, I believe, until next June. So we do have to go to referendum on that June date. And of course, the further you back that up, the more complicated it gets for everybody and the more times you have to run it.
1,000% want to check with Tina but I did softly check with her on this because there's no other state thing. It does give us the ability, actually it doesn't give us the ability, what we will do is to save money is just print the ballots and then hand count them as opposed to using the machines.
That's what we used to do, but I figured that was long gone by now. 'cause
No,
of
if there's nothing else, that's what we're gonna plan to do regardless. But a lot of the
Yeah.
reason that we have to have that earlier April vote is to give us enough time to send it to the state, to have it in this machines, to have it coded, to have the sticks to be able to push in. So while the date might be the same, we might have more time, another 2 weeks or 3 weeks or so before, like, we could push the school board vote and then print out the ballot with that number, the week of the election. I'd have to confirm with Tina that that's a possibility and see like, hey, if we wanted to keep this date, but, we didn't know, the state could have added something and that would change, but Tina, are you 100% sure that the state is like now past its deadline to add anything? And then B, if we are truly printing in-house these ballots, like when does the school board actually need to vote now? And could we change these deadlines just to give council a little more time to factor all these things in? So no promises, but I'll definitely ask Tina about that.
That would be great if we could. Nancy?
I have a details question again. How much did you say the buses cost? And there are two in the transportation item. And are they in the transportation line or do they live somewhere else?
So the transportation, I have 2 new bus payments at approximately $25,500 for FY '26 with interest at about $4,500 for estimates, because of course we don't know what
Okay,
those
so
would be
it's-
yet.
So there's debt with those, not outright purchase. How much do buses cost?
Around 120,000, 125,000.
I honestly thought it would be higher, so. If you'll indulge me, we get down into problem solving, and I'll make this very quick. I wonder, aloud, if we could hold off on one of the 2 buses for a year while you wait to see if the new bus routing software does actually increase efficiency. I was hoping it would save the entire cost of a bus, but simply wondering aloud if that's something that might be helpful.
What I'd have to look at, Nancy, which I will, I am pretty sure that the mileage that some of our buses are at, I think we have to pull them off the roads.
Okay.
And so to even do what we're doing, but I will triple check for you.
Okay. But simply my suggestion for you to consider.
Yep, absolutely.
Just had a general note too thank you, Amy, for all of this and for the additional data on Skowhegan and Orono, and you can see, this is an incredible value for the type of school like you, John, I have a 6-year-old, well, a little older than yours, but you start to look at these things and you start to think, hey, and also a great athletic program, but also was rising through the ranks in academics, and this is an enormous value for where we're at. And you look in the cost center analysis piece, I think one of the things I was surprised about was that kind of my gut, especially seeing like the 16% increase in the schools and then a larger increase last year than that, like the school was going to be the main driver, by a factor of 2 or 3 on increases in the total levy. But you look back at FY 2020, the school is at about 12.8 million. And with this figure, they're at 15.6 million. So that's a $2.8 million increase. And that's a lot for the Ellsworth taxpayer. The school department here is now costing, $2.8 million more every single year than it was in 20. But that's on par with just public safety, with just police and fire. At a department level request, it's $3 million more than 2020. So those are actually like on par. Now, that's at the departmental level request, and we'll probably be at 2.6 or so. But I was expecting the school was going to be like, a $6 million, a much higher increase of the magnitude of increase in city spending. But and then when you had those charts, Amy, it really shows, for lack of a better word, underfunding of the school for a fairly significant amount of time.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, pictorially shows, like, that's why the big increases. We can't do business with what we were doing for so long. And families want more from schools, and it costs.
And to your point, Michelle, though, there's like, you see it, it's a 16.8% increase in 1 year in FY '24, the year before I arrived. That's.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
it was a
both in the
massive
city-
commitment by people, it was.
And then you're at 8.9%, or sorry, 7.1% last year. So that's sure a decrease in the rate of the increase, but can we get back to that more at 3.5%?
Yes, that's our goal.
4%
That has
natural.
always been our goal, is this downward trend and then stabilizing.
While we're comparing departments, just the salaries have been really striking to hear that. So teacher salary topping out at 64,000, and we've looked at a number of salaries from other departments, not saying that they're not deserving, of course, but looping in overtime and everything, you know, you're looking at 3 times that amount in some other departments. It's pretty striking how low some of these wages are. And yes, there's other factors at play, but it's, you know, it's a great value for us. It's a little
Yeah.
sad to think of,
Yeah.
because it's very difficult to make a living, obviously. But, yeah, I just think it's worth considering.
Right.
Go back to understanding next steps. And if that's
I
to
think we're
come
waiting
and to
for
be
Charlie.
determined, that's fine.
Yeah, let me talk to Tina to
Okay.
validate some of that. I think it would be very helpful if there really is a functional way to get 2 more weeks, you know, to push back the school vote and it doesn't affect things, you know, if not, you know, we have a wrap-up meeting on April 10th that doesn't necessarily follow. We could bring you back next Thursday, April 3rd, which is when a lot of our social services and miscellaneous are coming in. Again, I say we're at this level now, but we flat funded pretty much every social service and nonprofit per the direction of the subcommittee. So that's next Thursday. If, you know, if there's any more, but it could change. Let me talk to Tina. We'd also scheduled a wrap-up kind of on April 10th, which I think is more of the natural place to say, hey, here's where capital, here's where we're at. Are we okay being here? You know, that the school's done everything they can to pull in expenses. This is their kind of final. This is what the full budget will be from the municipal side, from the city side, with all of our pieces, and we're targeting April 10th for that. But if we had a couple more weeks, and I could push that to the 17th, and there's no real effect to passage, we're a couple months ahead, especially on the city side of things, than we were last year. Actually, 3 months ahead. So,
About 500 meetings less.
yeah.
And none of them make me want to scream, so.
I know,
this is-
right?
This is
So
good.
far.
Plus.
So we'll just have to stay in touch, because currently our posted agenda for April 8th includes voting on the budget. And so if we're not going to know till the 10th, we'll just have to hold a special school board meeting to vote on the budget, which is fine. We'll just have to communicate, which I know Charlie will do with me, because we'll have to change some of our stuff as well.
Yeah, and if Tina says no, like we just got to stick with this, having it
Yeah,
these.
I had a feeling.
We could be at April 3rd, the Thursday, but I'll be in touch with Amy. I
Okay.
won't- To your point, Nancy, we're problem solving and on the meetings. I can do this offline. So.
It's just, it feels so good to at least close a loop here and there, so I understand.
Yeah. Are we good with the school before I move on to other progress updates and?
Is the school good with us? Do you have enough direction?
I've just wondered why Steve's so quiet.
He's been typing on his calculator.
I mean, I don't mind quiet, Steve.
I do have a question or two, but,
He always has to be last. That's why.
I know he
that's why I
does,
didn't
that's
say
why I
much.
haven't called him out till
That's why I
now.
was waiting.
Just when I thought.
Michelle, you mentioned, getting it back to 5%, which from the grand total would be $1 million. If you were told, and I'm not saying that, but if you were told you had to get $1 million out of that grand total, where would that go?
I'd
Where
throw
would it
up.
be? You'd what?
I'd throw up.
You would, okay.
$1 million I would throw up.
That isn't $1 million. That would be the entire increase.
Right.
I'm talking, I just did the grand total. If you're talking down below, that's a different story.
From
Yeah.
6.8 to
And I
6% to
wasn't- I
5.
wasn't saying that anyway.
Oh, okay, you're talking that.
She was
okay.
talking,
All right, all
yeah,
right,
and that would
okay.
be about 200, I think I said 284,000
Right, okay.
more to cut if we got to 5%.
The other question I have is, what prevents your school board from voting on the budget? Anyway, the way, whatever massage that you choose, what would prevent?
So, quite honestly, politically, we would always like to go to the school board with a budget that we feel council would also approve because of the resolutions and the voting on the cost centers and everything. Because if they pass a budget and then we come to you for a vote and you say, we're not going to approve this, we then have to go back, because you can't do line items. And so we would then have to go back and start the cycle again. And so could I take it April 8th, even if I don't have your answers? I could, but that's at a risk to the whole process and not something that I would feel good about doing, to be honest. I feel like we've worked really collaboratively, and so I wouldn't want to go to the board, my school board, until I knew that it was something that people felt good about, and in the spirit of what we've been doing, would kind of follow with that. So could we? Of course we could. But would I want to do that, not really knowing how it would affect the total with all the work the city has done? I wouldn't do that to them.
I'll just say this, it seems like when we push things ahead, we're just pushing, we'll push things back, whichever way you want to look at it. It seems like we're just putting off those hard decisions. At some point, I think we have to live within the schedule that we talked about.
Yeah.
And what do you think is realistic as far as between now and the 8th? As far, is it getting, what date to stay on schedule for the 8th? What date would you want to have an idea of where the council's at by the
Early next week.
early next week?
I mean, we're gonna debrief tomorrow, I won't lie. This is a daily grind to try to figure out, okay, what continues to move our school system forward that isn't at the expense of students? And trying to really, I've talked about this the last couple of years. Like Steve just said, you can't keep deferring and kicking the can down the road with fixing things or replacing things because it costs more. If we had done some of these things 4 or 5 years ago, it would have been exponentially cheaper. So really trying to, again, prioritize and figure out what that's gonna look like. Now cost-cutting exercises burn, right? They're more stressful, they're harder, because we feel like what we've presented, we've done 3 layers of that already. And so that's why we felt good about this, but I totally understand. You have to look at the whole picture.
The only other thing that we could do is, so we have 2 more meetings of listening, and then we have the meeting on the 10th to discuss, because we haven't, as far as I know, made any cuts or even given you any direction on what all we've done is sit and listen so far. So,
Yeah, this would,
well, let me finish, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
So, no, that's okay. So we have a meeting on the 3rd, and then we don't have another one until the 10th, which is our discussion meeting. If it's possible that we could do that on the 7th. I know that's still late and would only give you 1 day, but if you're already working knowing that we're going to probably need some reduction, could we do that? Is there a reason we're not having one on the 7th?
the Tuesday?
Monday,
Or is it a Monday? No,
Because
we
we
could,
have school board the 8th, which is Tuesday.
yeah.
we could add a Monday meeting to,
Instead of the 10th?
instead of the 10th. Yeah, it'll give me
I know that only gives you a week, but
the week, yeah, the weekend.
there's not an awful lot to do until we've had discussion anyways, really. Not, that didn't come out right, that came out a little, sorry.
Yeah,
What I
we
mean
could have a
is-
discussion list. 6 hours I've been in these meetings, but okay.
It's getting late. See, this is what happens when I go over my bedtime. Start getting close to it. But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That way
it-
we could actually hear everything and then have a discussion, and then you could have more time.
Yeah, and for me, that, I mean, it's a little different on the city side, right? You have line item veto. Like my discussions with Ashley is, as previously discussed with council, is that she'll keep track changes that councilors want. Some of them are like pro forma. We'll have kind of a column for those of just animal control fees, these types of things. And the other have been a little bit more substantive, like, you know, the fire department has requests for this, the police department, you know, what is the true cost of those pieces, you know, including benefits, including fringe, including technology. Essentially, you're like, you know, here's your new additions at the end. So that this is something hopefully a little more refined than last year, but something similar we did last year, where you can say, okay, here's our mill, and bang, 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 like, we're gonna drop our capital budget by this, we're not gonna invest in this, we're not gonna invest in these things.
Right. That's
so-
the discussion I want to have on the 7th.
On the 7th, so we'll be able to do that. But the school side, like, what's your discussion then gonna be, like, drop 2%
Well, no,
more?
that's so I guess my point is if we did that on the 7th and had our discussion, and we were talking, we would have a little bit more of an idea of what the city side is going to look like, because we're gonna have the because we haven't given you anything to work with yet. So if we could have that discussion on the 7th, and it's nothing but our discussion and going back over all of the comments that we had and discussing on whether or not we should have something, because right now all we've done is ask for additional information.
Yeah, and we'll
And then
have,
maybe we could have a better idea.
yeah, and we just got this
Tuesday morning.
number from the school, so we'll, you know, we'll be able to factor that into the mill
Right.
rate, look at the overview, look where we're at, to kind of have this final discussion. Are we okay with that mill rate where it's at? I think the thing that makes me nervous is like the city side I can cut. If the school doesn't come back with a different number now, or like has a, like, what, you know, and we get to that point, there's not like really a time to say, okay, now go back and try to find more money out of their budget, but
Right.
I can also
Which is
maybe.
another reason to move that meeting to the 7th.
Yeah, but what does that get you? Like, you can't.
It gets us an idea of the expectation for, like, right now, I can't tell you. I mean, like, saying 5% is an arbitrary number. And so, I mean, at least Amy, when going into the meeting, the school board going into the meeting on the evening, we could have some idea of saying, you know, we're a lot tighter than we thought we were, or whatever. But, and maybe they have to have a special meeting or something, but at least it would give an idea before that meeting.
So you're kind of lining it up, so at least at that point, then you can make the decision to say, okay, well, yes, you can move forward to your budget at this level the next day, or no, like, we can't for the school side of things, and you're gonna have to call a special, you're gonna have to call.
Or if you guys are working on this daily, and you and Amy talk back and forth about where this is all going, we'll also have that idea on the 7th before they vote of how it's looking. I'm just trying, before they have a vote, I'm just trying to get some information, so we don't end up that they vote on a budget on the 8th. We come back on the 10th and say, holy cow, this looks worse than I thought it was gonna look. Or, you know, or something like that.
Maybe that's I know you would hate that, Steve, that if I can work with Tina too on the break glass piece, because what I don't also want to set up is like, that we did the same thing that happened last year is, okay, if we're gonna do a cut exercise, it's all gonna be on the city side.
Exactly,
So we
exactly.
need to have, like.
Another reason for us to know what we're doing before they vote.
Could I ask a clarifying question in this conversation? The meeting on the 8th, but I've heard there could be a special
There could be a
later.
special.
I know that we can't move June according to Tina, but is the 8th locked because of the June vote, or is there flexibility there?
So the school board has to vote before you vote on
I
April
understand.
21st.
I understand.
So we have from the 8th to the 21st, I would assume. I don't know what has to go.
Public hearing.
The public hearing, that's the
And
only
they have to have
thing.
numbers.
That's right, yeah.
So,
Taking the
weeks before the
timelines,
21st.
when
Shouldn't we
would we
just
have
build
to
that
put
in
that?
now?
So it sounds like there's flexibility that you could work with on maybe the 8th doesn't have to be.
Yeah, this,
If the June vote is set, working backwards again from there, and it's not, I think to Steve's point, it's not to put off the inevitable, it's to give us all time to come up with
Exactly.
better budgets for the goals that we're trying to achieve, which include keeping the property taxes
Yep.
at
And
a
in
minimal
all honesty, I
increase.
think our discussion, because we haven't done anything through this process, but listen, I truly believe that we're going to need 2 meetings for us to be able, so the 7th and maybe the 10th too,
I
but
was gonna suggest keeping the 10th.
keeping
even
the
if we do
10th, but
7th,
that's why I just was, instead of going a week with nothing happening, except for the school meeting, that maybe we could have one the 7th, and be able to at least have an idea of what we're doing,
Yep.
and where we're going.
What if I know there's a lot of people's schedules, but what if the school board vote, we just you've already noticed the 8th meeting, but, what if the 15th is a week later, that's after the 7th and the 10th? It kind of sets a deadline, I'm just,
Enough time.
The only
15th is
thing-
our meeting, isn't it?
not
Your
21st.
meeting is the 21st, so the only thing that I'm wondering is the posting and the
Public hearing.
timelines for posting the resolutions and everything. I don't know if the 15 does that fast enough.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry, just want to let you guys know, the 7th is a special Board of Appeals meeting at 6:30 is scheduled in here. So I don't know if you want to move them or what, but I
It's
think
gonna
No.
snow, it has snowed
That
on those
meeting-
people the last two times.
FYI.
God himself could not make
Thank
me
you,
move that
Nate.
meeting. It's a blizzard.
Different
Oh,
night.
what?
The Special Board of Appeals meeting.
Oh, is that the one rescheduled?
Yeah, we're not.
Twice.
Oh, it just got rescheduled for, okay.
Well,
If
I
there's a-
still think that this is, I think they should.
Yeah, I think this is more important myself,
Yeah.
but,
You're not God. Well, maybe you are.
Close, very close.
they canceled for 3 inches of snow. I think that we're okay.
That's why we gotta, it's a big project. Let me
Let's
talk to
talk
Tina
about it.
and let me get to a new schedule. I don't wanna just be in this for schedule.
You've already advertised the public hearing for the 8th?
We don't have to advertise for public hearing, it's on the agenda. I would do an adjustment to the agenda, remove the vote from the budget, off the agenda, is what I would do. And then we'd have to call a special meeting. We just have to make sure that when we call the special meeting, we do it so that we have figures that you guys can then advertise for your public hearing.
Yeah. I appreciate, because it just.
I get it.
Yeah, I hate going into meetings and saying things without having an inkling of what
Yep.
I'm looking at.
I just want to thank everyone here. It's
Yeah,
clear that a
absolutely.
lot of work went into this. And just to share, my son's this is his first year at kindergarten, and we couldn't be happier with the education he's getting and seeing how hard everyone works.
Thank you.
And so it's really been wonderful, and now that I'm in that mindset looking at this, I'm like, well, we could spend more on this, and but I'm of two minds, right? I understand, like, we're trying to be, Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth, right? Like, every dollar impacts people a lot, but I'm also, I want to keep pushing, our schools forward and advancing the strategic plan, and I'm seeing the value of all that. So I'm not necessarily all that excited about a cut to what you've proposed. I think what you've proposed shows a lot of hard work, and it's reasonable considering everything, but at the same time, I'm one of 7, and I also, we're trying to balance a lot of things. So if you do, when you, that exercise showing us what it is you're actually would be cutting to get down just would be helpful, so it's not just a number, but it's
Okay.
that would be helpful for me, and I would imagine for the rest of the council.
So we'll follow up, we'll try to realign when the school will come back to talk about if they can pencil this down a little more, but not necessarily until the kind of final meeting where we can see where the full city and the school's at. And then you all can kind of make a decision on if we're good where we're at, and then move forward on the school side. Okay? Something, Steve?
I just struggle with, and full disclosure, I feel I shouldn't be voting on the school budget, and I haven't yet, probably never will, because somewhere in the weeds, there's a paycheck for my wife. but I struggle with getting to this point and then moving things around. And I just struggle with that. Here's the numbers, and you've probably weaned a lot of things out of it already, correct?
Yes.
Sure, another look doesn't hurt, but I struggle with not moving this around. I mean, this whole thing started when the city should get their act together on the municipal side to coincide with your side. And now you're here, and now we're pushing things back a little bit. And that bothers me. I realize I'm hearing what everyone's saying, but it does bother me that we're not leaving here tonight with a clear direction.
I don't leave any council with a clear direction now.
Any other questions?
No, I think we'll just end it at, we appreciate everything.
Thank you.
And we are sorry that there is moving things around, but I think personally, I think that it's better to be certain than sorry, and that we can all go in with a unanimous budget approval and all be on the same page. So I appreciate it.
Before we close this,
I knew he was going to do that.
yeah, I mean, we're here to do business. Could we hear from someone from the school board on your thoughts?
Would you like to hear?
There you go, Paul.
Everyone looks at Paul.
No, I mean,
Well, how much time do we have?
3
No.
minutes.
You're reading into Charlie's time. So
I
that's
got-
okay.
I got elected to the school board over 11 years ago, and I've long been a strong proponent of public education, way before I had my own kids, and will be after my kids are, my younger son, my second son is graduating this year, so I won't have any other kids in the public schools after that. But, you know, public education is a public good, and it's done so much for this country. And what we do here in Ellsworth is very much in the spirit of what public education was meant to do. It started in around 1850 when Horace Mann, the Commissioner of Education for the state of Massachusetts, helped Massachusetts become the first state to support public education very much in the form that it exists today. And every state followed that, and it's what led the United States to become the preeminent country in the world in terms of our economy and so many other achievements. So I'm proud to be serving on the Ellsworth School Board, and I'm really proud of the work that our superintendent has done, our business office, all the administrators, my fellow board members. I think this budget that we brought, this draft, I mean, we're not quite done with it yet, but I think it's very much, it serves the people of Ellsworth, it serves our students, it serves the public good. Yeah, it's when we finally come back to you, even if we don't hear anything, when we come back to you on the schedule of the 8th, or if we change it, the date, whatever it is, we're going to produce the budget that we think is the best one for our community, for all of us. And I have absolute faith that that's what we brought you here tonight. So I hope that you will think about that, consider that, reflect on that, and listen to, you're listening to all your constituents, but the ones who value public education the way I do, I think their voices really deserve your attention, and I hope that you'll take that into account. That's all I have to add, really, unless you have any specific questions.
No, but very well said. Thank you.
As you proceed.
Okay. Can we end it there? Are we all set? I think that's a great comment to end on, so thank you very much.
For the school, yeah, we got
For the
some other
school.
things.
Can we
yes.
take a break then?
Sure.
Thank you.
Shirley,
Thank you.
Sherry,
right, you ready, Charlie?
Yeah, so legislative budget, we kind of put a pin on this last time around. Just want to revisit really quickly after, is it Gary Fortier, he was at a finance committee meeting, and I double-checked his math, and, you know, he's right. You look at the city charter, and we talked about this last organizational meeting for council stipends. Sorry, I should have introduced the conversation before. I just went straight into
You
it.
started right smack dab in the middle, didn't you?
Yeah.
We are not actually in your head at this time.
You're not at my head at this time. So the council stipends, we talked about that at the organizational meeting. For those who were with us at the finance committee meeting a couple weeks ago, Gary Fortier kind of mentioned that they're falling behind the times, and if you look at the charter.
Time out. It wasn't Gary Ford either.
Ray,
It was Ray Williams.
Ray Williams, sorry, yeah, right. It was Ray Williams, you're right. It was Ray Williams. So Ray Williams was talking about, we're kind of behind on that piece, and, you know, I know we talked about at the last organizational meeting, he threw out some numbers of what it should be based on the charter. So I double-checked the math, he was right. And so my recommendation is that we move the council stipends to what the charter said, to increase since 2012 by $50 for the mayor per year, and $40 for the other councilors per year. That'll bring the total to $32.50 for the mayor, and from $2,500 and to $2,600.
no, it's only 2,000 right now.
Yep, it's gonna bring it to $2,600 from 2,000 for
Got it, thank you.
for other counselors. And that'd be a total cost of $18,850 to bring
So we're
in.
gonna jump everybody up in 1 year to,
Well, that's what so the charter,
it says we may, not do.
you may, and that's, you know, that, even to me, that's not a huge bump. You're looking from 2,500 to 3,250 just for the mayor, and then from 2,000 to 2,600 for the other council members.
The point that he made in that meeting was if we budget for it now, the future council, because it won't, we're not deciding it, it's the November 2025 organizational meeting. If it's budgeted, they will have that option to consider it, but if we don't budget it, then they don't have that option. So, and it was a good conversation about those who don't need the stipend versus the equity of that much more to make it workable for folks who do need to consider how they use their time.
And it doesn't say may, it says will be increased annually. Which is interesting, because
It
it's been
says
15
will?
years, and says the stipend maximum will be increased annually by $50 and $40 respectively, beginning January 1st, 2012. Which is interesting, because it went by 15 years.
Yeah, we never did it.
There's a $2,500 for the chairperson, $2,000 for other members per year. Stipend maximum will be increased annually by $50 and $40 respectively.
Maximum,
Oh, stipend maximum.
not the stipend maximum, so the most that you can ask for.
Stipend maximum will be increased annually by $50 and $40 respectively. Okay, so the maximum that we could increase to now is what I just recommended, which is $2,600 for council, general council members, and $250 for the chair,
Okay.
going from $2,500 to $3,250, and $2,000 to $2,600.
And but we couldn't, if we don't budget for it now,
We wouldn't be able
we
to go to the
wouldn't be able
maximum.
to have that. So it seems like we should budget for it to be consistent with that language, but that doesn't mean we have to do it.
Right, I guess you could do a budget reallocation afterwards, and, but I think there's no way council would go through that kind of process, so.
Well, I think my opinion, I think the kind of the equity stuff makes sense, you know, and it says we at least shall allow for,
Yeah.
So I think I think the suggestion of budgeting for it, and then the future council gets to pick. And we're consistent with the charter.
Yeah, I think we're obligated to have the maximum option there.
And if I understood you correctly, the increase in the budget is $4,350. over the 14.5 that's currently budgeted.
18,850 is what we go
Right.
to.
So it's 4,250,
to
or
back-
4,350 more.
Yeah, 4,350 more, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's only the increase?
Yeah.
I thought you said it was an $18,000
Total.
increase.
That's the new total.
It's going from 14,500 for everybody to 18,500
Oh.
for everybody. Sorry,
Gotcha.
I looked
Nope,
at,
that is much better.
yeah, it's,
Thinking, wow, that's a big increase for council.
no, this is like one of the smaller, to me, yeah, when I did the math, I was like, oh, wow, this is not.
No, it's fine.
It's all pizza parties.
Sadly, I also don't think it's gonna really encourage like, oh my gosh, now I'm gonna run because it'll make it so much easier to afford childcare when I'm in the city council. Like, that's still not
But
the
it's a
case.
small amount, it matters.
Yeah.
It's perks.
Well, I'll mention it to Ashley as kind of the other note for discussion at the end here. I don't think we're gonna change much of the mill about pulling this one back, but, so there's that. We'll see next week. I was trying to, I know I mentioned, two of the bigger ones that we talked about the fire department, that isn't another, we need another shot at that one. It was a big request for an increase. It's had a lot of big requests for increase over the past 5 years. We saw kind of a breakdown there. So I'm working with the chief and our finance team to kind of realign that departmental request to be a little more in line with the formats and substantiation documentation we've talked about, so we can.
Did you change the budget to what he actually ended up proposing to us?
I do have his new documentation, but we need to put it into the budget
into the
book.
budget.
I have first draft here, but I have a lot of edits to that draft, so I was hoping to come back probably, maybe I can get that ready for the social services piece, because it's such a big ask a request, or maybe that's just like one of the last things we consider.
Hey, Nate.
Hey, Nate.
Are you leaving the legislative budget?
I've been here the whole time.
Yes.
Oh, you have? Oh.
What the-
Oh, that's,
Someone's gotta take notes. Ashley's not there.
well, Nate, there's my note, the legislative budget, let's pencil in a manager adjust at the 18,850 level. And then we'll just kind of keep the council approved for that final discussion. We'll put a pin in it so we can discuss. And then Nancy, I know you had something on legislative as well.
I wanted to bring up the zeroing out of the conferences and meetings for the council. I think the Maine Municipal Association Annual Convention, there's something I tried to ask about attending, and it was either too late or we didn't have the money or something, but I think there are real opportunities, again, looking at, only one of us is in their second term, there's a lot of learning and a lot of value. I'd like to see, I don't know offhand what the MMA convention is for a day or two, but even the $500.
It's the first Wednesday and Thursday of October.
And it's usually like
Always.
$85, maybe $100, and it's very,
Depending on if you go 1 or
beneficial
2
to go,
days,
right?
but yeah, you should absolutely go, absolutely.
And I know they offer other training, some is free, some is not, but I just hate to see that zeroed out because there is a wicked learning curve to being here.
So I'm going to assume it's October 1st and 2nd this year.
So,
MMA is definitely, you should go to, Charlie, make sure, because it is definitely worthwhile, and your staff, you're not staff, sorry. I was thinking staff is sitting here. A lot of the staff goes too.
Yeah.
yeah, the absolutely, we do plan to attend this year. Last year was a little crazy, but I'll work with Nate and finance team on getting a little bit of conferences and travel built back into this budget. The other thing is, I've talked to Carrie, talking to Sulisard, there's in April, I think there's a new city councilor MMA training that's going on, and also, I think also everybody probably needs an update on FOA, for anything for Freedom of Access Act, I think is for Maine, just getting a quick refresher. We just did that as a management team, the entire management corps kind of sat through 3 or 4 hours of FOA training. Always good, even those folks who are with us for a long time, on what the rules are and making sure everybody's following them appropriately. It's also something that we're required to do, so.
The other thing that, and you may have a fairly large turnover in the council, because 3 are up. You may also want to have some training on ethics, codes, policies, those types of things to budget in there, to have someone come in and do those trainings for council, because I don't think that's been done, it hasn't been done since I've been here.
Yeah, that's
That's
actually
it.
code ethics training, maybe there needs to be a little bit more beefed up if there's gonna be 3 new, that we do a round of that.
When I was elected with Casey, during the organizational meeting, the attorney come and spoke for maybe 45 minutes or so, and it was incredibly informative. Just some of the things that he brought up, it was really informative. And I think it was informative for people that had been on the council as well. I don't think it was just Casey and I think everyone
Yeah.
got something from it.
I think that would be great.
It's an introduction to the charter as well.
Mm.
Just what is it, how do you access it,
Yeah.
why?
And our ordinances,
Yeah.
what we have, why we have them, how to follow them.
Just to clarify, the MMA conference is the 8th and 9th of
Oh, it's a week
October.
later?
Okay, so we'll add in a little more budget there and just kind of bake that into some of the planning processes here to move forward. Also, we're gonna rearrange, I wanna put capital at kind of the end part of this process. I know we've talked a lot about, we have the initial list, talked a lot about really going for especially our bigger stuff into a bond ban cycle as opposed to just all the deferred maintenance and all these pieces. We've got a kind of year one, what the requests are that I want to discuss in detail, but in some ways, I've got like an initial manager's recommendations when I was talking with Sarah about that on the way over here. But my manager's recommendation may change a little bit depending on how much we need this to get to, like, for me, that, 2.9% is inflation. I know that I hate going by, Michelle hates going by that kind of, and of course, if there's absolute needs, but there is a piece of me that's just, you see those big increases from previous years, we've got to get back into more of a regular inflationary or a little bit plus. That's, those big jumps kind of made up for, as we discussed in the cost center analysis, for some just basically under budgeting by pretty substantial amounts for 3 of the highest inflationary years in a generation. But we're kind of caught up there. We've stopped the bleeding. we know where it's at, and we're, I think as you've mentioned at the top end, Michelle, just we need to pencil it down as much as possible, and that might mean for some tough decisions at the end of the line here. And I'll try to really update this schedule. Because there is also, like, the school one has to be passed, like that one has to be done, the number has to go out there, we have to do those other pieces. But the city side, if we have to pencil down, I know we want to have it on time. I did fast track it by a month to get it here. But I want to make sure that that's 1,000%, where we need it to be. So I hope that we'll be locked in, and then we can transition to strategic planning based on the budget that we've passed, and then capital improvement planning, TIF planning, like, I think to your words.
All the fun stuff.
The fun stuff. Once you've said no to some things and feel like we're at a reasonable tax rate, both on the city and the school side, we can move forward. And there's also just a lot of process steps, knowing what I know now about the school coming in at this time, and we fast track things so that the city and the school could go together. But next year, if we want to still live by this, like, very early deadline, I mean, when I was doing my research into other cities and towns, like, it's a May city manager's recommendation for the budget. And I read all those city manager recommendations, like, wow, that must be nice. I had to do mine in February. But we'll do another round of that too, so that we can kind of, it's going to be a little different, I feel like, this year, but next year we can really optimize the timelines in the school, especially on this piece of, like, the school is very different. They kind of come in with one number and broad background on what that goes towards. And you all don't have line item. So where is the right place to kind of bring the school in? Is it halfway through the budget cycle like we're doing now, or is it actually at the end of the budget cycle when the city's pretty much locked already on, like, this is what we feel like is appropriate for the city? The school comes in with their locked budget number, and then the council can look at both of those two numbers, knowing that they've already dialed down one piece as much as it can go to what they're comfortable with, and the school has dialed down their piece to what they're comfortable with, and then the council can kind of see both pieces together and say, well, school, you got to do 2% down, in the city, you got to do 4% down, or conversely. That seems to be probably the better process. as opposed to having the school kind of jump in the middle like a regular department. So just a small change on that piece, but much better shape than last year, to your point.
Yes.
Definitely, we definitely are in much better shape.
And
Go ahead.
Did you say you're shifting the capital improvement, so it's not this Thursday in 2 days?
Yeah, Public Works is gonna be a monster. So,
Okay, so capital improvement is not happening
not that
Thursday.
day, we're gonna bring that to the last one, the 10th. And then,
Okay, and then in the April 3rd with the other folks, have we talked about setting their expectations for a 3-minute presentation?
Yeah.
5-minute, is that clear to them?
I hope so.
let me reach back out and,
Just make sure that
So,
they're
and these are
not,
all people that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean, I interrupted you, Nancy. Go ahead.
I don't want them to be preparing a 20-minute presentation on something they love deeply, and we've only got 3 minutes for them. It's just setting the expectations.
yeah, Nate, I know Ashley's been doing an amazing job of kind of reaching out to those folks, but I'll just make sure on that piece. I should also note that I made that reference to a lot of staff too and departments. Some of them have been really great, and some of them it's like, and line item number 6.
There's still the traffic light out there, so.
I honestly think that Ashley told them that honestly not to have a presentation and that they'd only be, just to be prepared for you guys to call them up if you had any questions. So,
Okay, so matching expectations on both ends would be good.
So you guys would want a 3-minute presentation from,
If there's something big, if it's like this is a 10% increase in this one category, then it's been helpful to see that, like, you need to understand what this looks like and how it works, if it's just a small.
But you've already flat funded.
yeah, what do you think, Tammy? Tammy was on the subcommittee with Ashley and Tina and others on the social services that honestly kind of set the tone for the rest of myself and others on just, we're flat funding. You know, this is a tough year.
Yeah, it's kind of the way we took it, it's just kind of, we weren't sure where we're at, and so we just flat funded. The only reason I'd like to hear from them is we do have a new counselor that probably should familiarize themselves with understanding what these services do, so I'm okay with them coming up and speaking, but I do think we need to have a 3-minute limit on it.
we can send something out and just make sure that they limit it to 3 minutes.
Less is fine.
13,
Yeah,
14.
if they'd like to speak, no more than 3 minutes.
Yeah,
But
that's
say,
what
but say it in a nice way.
Yeah, no-
So there's 27 of them times 3
Yeah, an hour and a half.
of Jeff's presentation.
Yeah, that would-
But a lot, I mean, I remember last year, a lot of folks didn't even show up, or if they did, they didn't.
Well, there was
speak.
snafus and invitations too, where people didn't know.
Last year's a really good benchmark to compare to.
Yeah.
I mean, and the new funding application that you guys sent out, was actually really detailed too. Well, they asked for a lot of details on what was going on, so just reviewing that too, for me anyway.
Okay, so.
Can
so
certainly
I
help,
guess-
but
Yeah, so.
familiarize me with these, presenters, and I would certainly do that, but.
I'm okay
And some of
with
these are
it.
nested, like the Recreation Commission usually hears from the ones listed right under it and then kind of presents on their behalf as part of its budget. Or we took those out this year.
yeah, there is a question on, it's one of the reasons that I want to move towards a Parks and Rec director is to like centralize all that budgeting relative to Parks and Rec, which is already substantial even if you don't add a Parks and Rec budget,
Yeah.
so that it has more oversight on that piece.
Is the Recreation Commission prepared to talk on those?
I'm meeting with them tomorrow morning, so I'll double check.
You know, I met with Eric
Good.
today, maybe. Yeah, yesterday. You know, and I did talk to him about, you know, the rec commission budget. I've talked about that. That'll probably be what I'm bringing in the wrap up too. I'm still gonna work on the TIF funding. I feel like there's an opportunity there to limit the taxpayer impact on that rec commission. It was pre-funded a little bit, but if we're looking to hold middle and just kind of keep rec-related activities, probably keep it under economic development as a department head, but reporting to the economic and community development person, that that can help me kind of limit the full budget impact here. And I talked to Eric a bit about yesterday, because he had a full budget presentation last year for a rec department. This rec commission budget that's in here is really mostly flat funded. It's, I can handle that one. It's the next one that really, I think, for recreation. I've also asked the harbor, or offered them, it's not really clear on some of these things too, which on, who originates these budgets and who pushes them forward. So, I've said no to a full-time harbor master for the year. It's, a lot of the FTEs I've just said no to, and except for a janitor, potentially, and that was pretty much it. But the Harbor Commission has some good reasons for wanting to have a full-time harbor master. We're currently using a highway employee who's got their harbor master license and a couple bucks an hour stipend, and 2 part-time employees there. And I think there was talk with the Harbor Commission on, should we add inland waterways? And there's some cities and towns that do that, and a bunch of other pieces. To me, it was like, I want to get a Parks and Rec director here to have a little bit more, and have more time to figure out a full-time harbor master. Let's keep it as it is. I don't think we'll find it cheaper than a $2 stipend increase.
What's the harbor master gonna do in the winter?
Yeah, there was ideas on
Ice
they'd kind of be
fishing.
planning.
Ice fishing.
And I think that's why you left the harbor and master as a full-time position, because then they went on unemployment in the wintertime and then came back to the city, but the city's a single payer on unemployment, so it was essentially kind of a full-time employee, but one that you all were paying to go, on to a different place. So we don't want to go that cycle. So, yeah, if the harbor master was to be full-time and dedicated there, I would almost want to consider it an employee of the rec department, and there'd be a whole range of winter activities involved in recreation that they're planning. And I'm not going to be there quite yet. I agree with the concept. Castine is a harbor master, but it's kind of a part-time.
It's very different though. We're a coastal town, but not really, right? Like, you don't have Castine, and there's just a lot more boats and slips and everything going in Castine versus, or Brooksville, or any fleet, any commercial fleet.
Well, that's the interesting part. Castine has a part-time harbor master, and it's even though
They have 3 spots on their wharf. I go there all the time. 3 spots. So you have to fight for them. If the boat's in.
Yeah, it's
not very much.
It's really more MMA and the boatyard, Eaton's Boatyard, that kind of dominates that type of activity. But we do get a lot more traffic up there. So, yeah, but I've asked the harbor master to kind of come in and, the Harbor Commission, if they'd like to speak and kind of advocate for their piece. And that's the way I kind of considered all the social services folks too. They were flat funded by the subcommittee. But if they felt like they wanted to come speak and argue, just like always, our recommendation, whether it's subcommittee or myself, which is the manager's recommendation, absolutely, the council gets to decide. It's not,
Do they know what you've recommended?
I did have, I think Ashley sent out, once the budget was released last Thursday, let folks know that the budget's released. It's public, it's on the website, where everything's at, so.
I think we had a comment here.
I talked to someone about what the harbor master did over the winter at one point, and they said they did a lot of budgeting and managing wars. So it's not, I just know that, I don't know. It's not that they go on vacation for winter, but I just know that someone told me that at one point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I hate to be ended on that a little bit of uncertainty, but I gotta talk to Tina. I gotta look at where these weeks are at, because I totally get it. We want to be fast where we're at. We set the schedule, but it was a pretty aggressive schedule to get these other pieces in. And if there is another couple weeks on that school side of things, and we're already setting a fast track deadline compared to most cities and towns in Maine. As always with me, I'd like to have the time to do it here. I think we've made a great start, but I will endeavor to kind of keep the school in here and work with Tina and just see how flexible that is. Can we have another week? That would be really, really helpful, but
Why are we unique?
the school vote.
Right, but don't all municipalities, unless they chose not to, if their municipality voted out of that option, but.
It could just be the like cities and towns that I was looking at, Orono, Brewer, Skowhegan, others that were just happenstance that there may be RSUs, but yeah, most of their manager letters were not nearly as early as ours in the budget cycle. So, but maybe we are not unique, to your point, to schools that, or cities that are our size and,
Have our own school.
but also there is that interesting, like that vote that got taken on how the referendum works. I don't know, maybe a lot of other places have that. We don't even necessarily have to have that. That was a referendum that got added.
I know Bangor has it. I don't know how they do their budget, but Bangor has a referendum every year for their school system.
Interesting.
I think there's advantages to also, if we can, to have it done in April. It gives city time to plan and set sail rather than June 30th, you find out which budget is.
Totally. I think the big
So-
process change for me is just like we got to have, January 31st, when we originally kind of pitched the budget calendar for the city side of things, that was like departmental submissions in. Like if we're going to match like this, we need to probably be in like December or even November. But then you're kind of like, you're not almost far enough into the year-to-date actuals. That's the piece I'm like, I'd almost rather be a month or two just from a functional level to see our year-to-date actuals.
Right, halfway through the fiscal year makes sense.
Yeah, at least halfway through the fiscal year. So there is like almost a practical reason, but. Michelle and Tim, did you guys used to do it? When was the time frame you used to bring these things in?
Meeting
March,
started
April,
in,
and May.
yep, this is.
So this is about when you guys used to do it.
The difference is we'd have a meeting or two a week, but they would be, we'd have more meetings so that you'd have a few presentations and then discussion at every meeting. So that we kept track as we went along. Tammy and I would keep track of what they're talking about and the changes that they made, or if they wanted more information or something. But after every single meeting, the discussion, the presentations were shorter, and then there was discussion. So then, once we got to the end of all the presentations, then we had a meeting and we went through all of the changes that we made throughout and made sure that everything was as we wanted it to be, or if there needed to be more, or maybe we could bring this back. But it also, we had a school department, we didn't have to have a vote, and then we had the RSU, which we had no say on, because that, and then.
They just
we
sent you a
got the bill.
number. Yeah.
And then back to the school department right before I left. So,
So just to kind of a different system back then.
yeah, we didn't have the vote, we didn't have to worry about the vote.
My expectation, though, would be similar here, that Ashley and Nate have been kind of keeping these notes, and they're kind of in two columns. One is it's just the general piece, and then one is like this really affects the budget for these FTEs and these other pieces that you guys have
Yeah.
questions on. So, like, these are the ones that we could say no and drive mill down.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some, I missed the first meeting, but this last meeting, I have some notes of things I'd like to go back and revisit and discuss.
Keep pushing. I think it's
Yeah,
going
keep
pretty well,
pushing. It's
Charlie.
go-
Just make it
Except
work.
it's so much better than it was ever for quite a while.
We're
You've
getting
done
there.
such a great job, Charlie. We're just, it's all, it's all good from here. It's all good.
It's on the last note on water, because one of the reasons Mike was brought in to, well, it's one of the reasons he's Public Works Director, but that, I noticed that he had the best budget of anybody in Public Works, probably one of the, except for the police department, best budget in City Hall. In a sea of Excel sheets and things that weren't formatted the right way, I was like, oh my gosh, here's and then brought him in, I was like, wow, Mike really has great, like, you can tell how much he cares, every single line in him has it. And so, he's been trying to replicate that for now 5 department budgets for, water, wastewater, highway, solid waste. I think there's something else in there too. So we're getting there, but we had to do kind of another round of like, and they went without a public works director and other things for a while. So we're trying to retrack these things over, and we're finding things like, benefits were budgeted for, but then paid for by the city, but not reimbursed by the water or wastewater department. So, okay, we got to make sure that happens now. Or with this account, like, have you ever gotten that much revenue? No. Okay, like, no. So a lot of the things are like kind of first research that's been done on these areas in multiple years, probably 4 or 5 years. So it is a complicated budget. And so we had to have another draft of it, so that, you know, your budget book submissions, I'll have new insert. I hate to do it. I was trying to get it for tonight so you could insert your things tonight, but we didn't quite get there. So I'll send out a digital copy tomorrow, and then I'll have fresh copies.
It's not gonna fit.
Well, you have to pull out the public.
Oh, okay, all right.
We're not gonna, the Public Works ones, the numbers won't change. We'll be able to update it online, but we're
Oh,
just.
so we need to pull stuff out and replace it?
Just the section 4 Public Works, and highway, yeah, so they'll just be that piece. There are some substantial differences that I had been noting and wanted to get through.
And are you changing the front page too, the summaries?
Yeah, there's
You're gonna
a,
wait and do that at the end?
I think I'm gonna wait and do that at the end, because I don't want to give people false expectations of, you know, seeing where the school's at. That was a big one, like, we had kind of an initial area where we're at, you know, at my initial departmental cut level, we're down 1% on the city hall side. Now I'm looking, things are like 1%, maybe when you add capital and some of the other pieces, maybe we're at 2, but I think to your point, Michelle, like, that's where we need to get to for that final piece, and then you can say, here's the buffet of things that are really important, yes, but maybe next year, or maybe not at all. And do we move forward with, you know, just if you take the fire, police request alone, that's like $400,000 to $500,000 in additional, you know, so that's, those are the types of pieces that'll be difficult decisions to make at that time. But now that we have the school side of things, which is, you know, the majority of the tax or mill rate, and we'll have a pretty good expectation of where we're at from the city, and we can decide, okay, well, we're still within around 3 to 4%. That's half the rate of increase from last year. That's okay. Or maybe Patrick's like, I'm not going above 2%, and city and the school needs to cut this, and these two things are superfluous. But we'll have the data to do that by that April 10th date. And that's the thing that worries me a little bit, is that, yeah, we'll be able to, that period of time, the only place to cut would be on the city side. So how is there enough space to kind of equitably decide which side of city spending needs cuts, so.
That is a lifelong question. It's been happening every year, forever and ever and ever.
You know, probably want to.
Since we became a city, what, 200 years, how many years ago?
Oliver.
Yeah, Oliver Ellsworth.
Ellsworth.
He never stepped foot in this.
I don't think he ever
He
cared
did
about
not.
Oh, what are you talking about? He stands over
No,
Steve.
that's Thomas Jefferson.
It's Thomas Jefferson?
Does not look like
It
Thomas
does look like Thomas
Does
Jefferson.
not look like Oliver Ellsworth.
Is he supposed to be a ghost?
I think it's
It's
the
the ghost
shrubbery
of
hedge.
Thomas
that's-
Jefferson.
The shrubbery hedge is in good shape then.
Possessing Oliver.
That's true.
It's a
A
mega
goat
ghost.
tree, a good.
I like that.
That's a good one. All right, are we done?
Yeah, it's
We're
falling
done.
apart
Thank
over
you.
Thanks, Sarah.